Welcome to the Choose Your Path series. This is a series dedicated to all the different niche markets in the Pokemon TCG to give you an insider view of all the different perspectives of this hobby. Once again, if you are new to the Pokemon TCG, if you're a beginner in the Pokemon TCG, if you're a veteran in the Pokemon TCG and you want to see how graded cards are a good thing, or whether or not you want to do singles and raw cards, whether you like sealed investment or overall just running a Pokemon business online or brick and mortar, this is a series for you to give you a glimpse into each one of these different perspectives and niche markets that may give you a direction that you might be good at doing and want to pursue. So once again, sit back, relax as we go through another episode of Choose Your Path. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another edition of Choose Your Path. And today we have Connor from Rock Pokemon joining us today to talk about graded Pokemon card buying and selling. So, Connor, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me, Andy. This is truly a pleasure. This is awesome. I've loved watching this series, and I'm really excited to be here. It's been the first time in a while I've done a podcast. Been a little busy, so this feels right, feels good. But yeah, I'm Connor, Rock Pokemon on Instagram and YouTube. I am a collector of many things: art, Pokemon, Harry Potter, Weiss Schwartz, anime. IPs, all those types of things, sports memorabilia. Been collecting since the late 90s with sports and Pokemon, gotten to art, gotten to watches, few other, dabble in a few other things, but started my YouTube channel during the boom in late 2020. And kind of came out of the closet as a collector, started to share more on Instagram, and have been super blessed to be a part of this community. Never thought that what I collected would lead to such like super cool relationships. So just super glad to be here. And yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's nice having all these different people continue to come on to here and share their stories and share their successes and how they've gotten there, which really helps people decide where they want to go. And that's really the purpose of these interviews, is to help people see the different niches, the different areas, and how people have been successful in this hobby, in the past and going on into the future. So first of all, we got a series of 9 questions today. I did add a one little curveball that has not been asked on any of these before. So Connor's going to be the first guinea pig here for that question, which is coming up. So we'll definitely point that out when we get to it. And I think it's, more going into the realistic aspect of these interviews to have people think of maybe some of the downsides or some of the things that really do kind of possibly cause issues when you want to be successful in here. So other than that, you ready to go ahead and start digging through these questions and start giving your answers for these?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first question we have is that, what do you do currently or before getting into buying and selling graded Pokemon cards?
Yeah, so this is all a side hustle hobby for me, right? So tell a little bit of my story, because I've mentioned it before in lives and kind of talked about it, but not a ton of people really know like my career and where I'm from. They know I was in finance. They're not sure why I left finance. They might be wondering, what the heck do you do now? So um, started my professional career in finance for a very, very large media and data company doing dividend forecasting. So I had a portfolio of companies like Apple, where I would say, hey, over the next 3 years, I think they're going to pay these kind of dividends based on analyzing the company and reading research reports and reading the company filings and all those things. So that afforded me the opportunity to interact with a lot of people within the financial markets that were using that data. So got to move very quickly into the wealth management space. So I worked on a team that managed several $billion of assets for ultra high net worth individuals. So a lot of like self-made business owners. Like we had a lot of guys that like built like awesome construction companies, or they might have been professional real estate investors and kind of everything in between, and also athletes and celebrities. So was a secondary advisor on a lot of those relationships, worked my way up to also being primary on a lot of relationships as well. Worked exclusively with the co-founder, co-CEO on a whole book of business with athletes in our, which to start to cut my teeth. Private companies do, and long story short, ended up advising a company or a couple of guys, right, on a equity fundraise, and was able to then leave that career and join them in founding that new company. So we basically raised money, closed on that round, and then I got to join the company as a co-founder, and we kind of started things off. So I've left the financial services industry. I'm now in the defense industry. I won't really get into what I do there, but all through that time, I've been collecting a variety of things, right? And buying, selling, trading, you name it. And basically, so in when an important thing to note, I guess, is that in 2020, right,
Hmm.
everything started to explode, right? Obviously, we all know kind of what's happened over the last 3 years, and I was a very interesting time in my life. My father had just passed away unexpectedly. I was spending a lot of time with my family. I was back in my old house. I was pulling a lot of my stuff out of their attic. And I was observing what was happening in the collectible space as I started to re-enjoy some things I had collected or kept in their safe at their house, or art I had stored there, and all these things. And I realized that I felt that a lot of people were making decisions around their personal finances in the realm of collectibles that were going to be detrimental to their long-term financial position. And that's what eventually led me to starting a YouTube and an Instagram and all of these things. So, long story short, I have a background in financial services, investment, financial planning, all these things, which I think give me a unique perspective on this as a what some people refer to as an alternative asset class, if you want to view it as in investing terms, and give me some ground to stand on, or a position to potentially help people or offer some thoughts from that perspective. Kind of about shiny cardboard from the lens of financial literacy.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really good to get that perspective because, sometimes you hear a lot of YouTube channels and a lot of things come across where everything's going to gain, everything's going to go forever. You can put a lot of money into this and you're going to be fine. And the truth about it is that it's still all speculating. We have no clue how long any collectibles market will sustain. And sometimes getting that outside financial, kind of that conservative, cautious view on some of these things is a great perspective to have at the end of the day to make good decisions that are secure for yourself, where you're not getting in situations where you're going to not have the finances to be able to cover major expenses that happen in life. Everybody has emergency expenses that come up, especially as you get older. Sometimes they get even more expensive as you keep getting older. And so those are just big important things to remember when you're investing into any kind of collectible, especially, is that you don't have the financial securities like even inside of an IRA, or as traditional investments that have safety nets almost, or at least not safety nets but a more secure version of investing.
Yeah, more traditional sense,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting, right? Because I kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth with it, right? Because obviously I'm very active in this space,
Mm-hmm.
but the only reason I can really do that is because I know I have such a strong amount of cash flow from my business, from my career, and I've saved really adequately and invested traditionally for decade
Yeah.
plus at this point, right? Since I was, probably 15 years now. But also I probably to a fault. it's weird, right? Because I talk about this where like I'm an entrepreneur, right? I run my own business. We have a team of 10 now. We've raised millions of dollars. We've done a lot of cool stuff with a lot of cool people, right? It's a very from the outside looks probably very high risk, right? Now I take the other side of that and say, well, I'm just betting on myself and my skill set, and I have a high amount of confidence in that. But from the outside, that might be scary to
Yeah.
someone, right? That entrepreneurial. We see the same thing with Pokemon, right? Like people want to get into this from the business side, and start to understand that's really a bet on yourself and your skill set, right? And that can be depending on what your skill set actually is versus how you perceive it can have a different level of risk or risk of failure, right? But my background, because of the type of clients I used to work with, a large majority of what I did was to prevent them from losing money, right? They had gotten very wealthy by starting their own business, being a very, driven and successful athlete and like everything in between. And then it was like, okay, how do we take the more conservative approach to still grow?
Yeah.
But not like to mitigate the downside, really, because at that point it's just, binary decisions, binary bets make you wealthy. Diversification keeps you wealthy,
Right.
right? So it was like, how do you mitigate that? So it can be a little hard because sometimes I will come off as very very bearish or very conservative, but it's largely from a place of when I was in the wealth management industry, I started to write a blog for millennials, like people our age, right,
Mhm.
who I think that like one of the biggest travesties of like the whole education system is the lack of education around financial literacy,
Oh,
right? So
absolutely.
anything basic blocking and tackling, savings, budgeting,
Yes.
what all these different accounts are, what how credit cards work, like
Yep.
literally. I mean, people just don't
People don't know.
know. They don't know. And it's a systemic issue because then they can't teach their kids. Their parents didn't know. They either never talked about money because everyone was scared of it, or they had money, so no one really had to talk about
Yep.
it. Um, and so that's, a huge reason why I dove into the content creation space was I knew I could basically trick people into learning financial literacy, skills by talking about shiny cardboard, right? Like
Yeah.
distract them with the Charizard, but like we're talking about, we're breaking the whiteboard out. So,
Yeah.
um, and all that to be said is I just, I care about people and I want them to be successful and I want them to make money, of course. And people will say, well, you're saying telling them not to do this thing. And I'm just saying, understand the risk,
Right.
understand, I think what we see the most from my experience as an advisor is people have a very, very poor ability to actually understand their capacity for risk and their appetite for risk, meaning how much they don't understand how much they're willing to take, and they don't understand how much it's going to hurt and how much they're what the probability is that they'll capitulate or sell basically
Yep.
when things get bad. And we see that same thing here. We see the same thing in the collectibles hobby. Now that it's a market, we were talking about this before the stream, right?
Yeah.
Now that it's now that money's involved, right? Now that asset values are all the way, to the moon on all these cards, blah 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 blah. Now it becomes a space where it does affect people, right? And it can affect their long-term standing, in the normal world with the rest of their life. So I just want people to be careful because honestly, if you buy a case of booster boxes and it loses 50%, you know, that might like hurt you, but what was the upside you were really going to get for that, right? Like is it going to change your life on the upside versus that downside, right? And it's just I think about these things a lot and it's just kind of like are we understanding kind of the risk reward here?
And that's something too, even my channel, I'm very conservative when it comes down to what you should be going for and how you assess things. And some people say, you're repetitive sometimes on things, because I do say you need to understand budgeting. The market's always changing, especially in today's current macro economy. You have to be looking at your personal finances, because you can't eat shiny cardboard at the end of the day. As much as you might want to, and as much as you might get mad about it, overall, this stuff could become a rock for sales. There can be no liquidity to this. If that macro economy turns sour really fast all of a sudden, and people are trying to make the decision whether to put fuel in their vehicle to go to work, or buy groceries for their house, or buy shiny cardboard, I hope that they're choosing to do the latter. But in general, is that if you're investing and if you're trying to sell these items and you've put a lot of money tied up into this, thinking, well, I can just sell it tomorrow on TCG Play or eBay, you might get into a situation where you learn really fast that this market turned, and it's not as easy to sell this product as I thought it was. And then you're sitting on this thing with no ability to liquidate that and turn it into actual capital. It's not like a stock where you can just go and click a button and it's gone. This is physical items that you need to understand how to get rid of and successfully get rid of them, and try to keep your head above water while doing it.
Yeah, I think people very much underestimate how an item that's very common and has a very high amount of supply can very, very quickly become difficult to sell in an environment where, and this is the biggest, whether it's a graded card or whether it's a sealed product, I'm in the camp that there's likely going to be someone with a lower cost basis than you, or who's more willing to pull the rug out and sell it for the lowest anywhere, and you're going to be left with a highly liquid item. So you just have to size it appropriately, right? It's the same thing as any purchase you make, right? Like when you buy a car, right? Do you buy the $30,000 car when you make, $50,000 a year? Maybe not. Do you buy the $30,000 car when you make $100,000 a year? Maybe. It depends on, what the whole, and then there's a million other pieces that go to that. But it's actually, it's putting all the puzzle pieces together, and that not even the investment side, just a simple consumer discretionary spending side, right? We spend money on all sorts of things all the time. I buy this
Yep.
Togepi skateboard. I buy, a TV. I buy a
Yep.
new pair of shoes. Like, um, and do you understand kind of your, your cash flow, your budget, your, what's going in and out every month, what are your all these things. And we don't have to really, go all the way down the rabbit hole, but it's just very simple. Like without having a rein on your personal finances, you got to be really careful of just spending money on things that are either just for fun, right? Because it's
Yep.
good to have fun, but you got to be reasonable, but also speculating, right? And this is the biggest thing is I will say this again and again, asymmetric risk to the downside, meaning that on a risk adjusted basis, generally the upside in a highly speculative item is poor compared to the downside that there is in that item. I mean, the probability of it going from 100 to 0 is much higher than it going from 100 to 200, right? And
Correct.
uh, again, high risk, high reward a lot of the time, but that's the mistake people make. A lot of times it's high risk, kind of mediocre reward, but it's fun, so they want to do it,
It's
right? And
adrenaline.
that's
Yep.
where you start to get into trouble. Yeah, yeah. Your emotions come into play way more in the collectible space than they do, with a stock, unless in certain circumstances it's different.
Yep.
But money's an emotional thing.
It is. And the other part is too is that people my age, considering I'm probably one of the older ones in this hobby. I'm not gonna say I'm the oldest, but when it comes down to it, I'm gonna be 37 here in a couple days. So I
Right.
sit there and I look at it going, okay, I remember I was in the workforce already a few years and already bought a car and had bought these things that were more luxury items. When you come out of college and you start making money, you do stupid things like buying the luxury items because you're making more money. But
Yeah.
with with seeing what we are with the macro economies around the world, not just the United States, you look around the world. I remember getting price reductions at work. You want to keep your job, you're taking 20% cut in your pay for the next who knows how many months. It's your decision. You can get laid off, or you can, and you're sitting here trying to figure out how am I going to make the payments on these things
Yeah, I mean,
when,
you were in the workforce in '08, right?
yeah,
'07, '08. Like, I'm sure it was
yep, that's exactly it. I had
scary,
just oh
right?
07, '08, was in the workforce. Came out of college in '08, started in '09, '10, 2009, 2010. And I remember 2009, I had been in there for a year, just enough to get them loans. And oh, yeah, you're making the money, you're good. And then I remember having come into a conference room and end of 2009, and the company I work for sit there and go, well, guys, you got one of two options. You can either A, take a 20% pay cut today, until further notice, or we're going to have to give you a layoff. Tell us what you want to do right now. You can sign the paper for the reduction or the layoff. We'll honor either one, and those things could happen.
I mean,
It's
we're seeing it right now in tech,
we are
right?
we're seeing a lot of tech
Tons
come up,
of,
layoffs, and layoffs. So
and like the overall jobs numbers have been pretty good, but there's spots of weakness that will in
mm-hmm.
just, without going way deep down into it, it's,
Yeah, oh yeah, we could go forever.
I think that I think that just like it goes back to that I think people have a bad ability of assessing the downside to their entire financial situation. I think a large part of it is because most people don't do an adequate job of necessarily educating themselves on the space, or they're listening to the wrong people.
Yeah,
They're listening, or they're not consuming factual information, right? Just like
yeah,
news that is from an unbiased source, which is difficult to I don't necessarily blame people. It can be very difficult, but
yeah.
it's worrisome because quickly, in a very rapid fashion, all 95 plus this hobby could become very, very illiquid and largely worthless in a very short span of time. Probability of that, I assign some to it, but probably not high.
Not high.
It's always there. It's more, I think, the risk of your personal situation shifting
Shifting.
in a way that you
Yep.
don't foresee, and you not being adequately prepared for that. And that's what I worry about. I mean, and maybe I worry too much, or maybe I'm too pessimistic, or I don't give enough people a
Yeah.
bit of the doubt. Experience has not shown me that people have that ability. And look, I'm dumb. I make dumb decisions on stuff, but this is like, again, I'll go back to say it, like, I couldn't do all this. I couldn't dabble. I couldn't have this whole side hustle. I couldn't be spending, I spent, a lot, thousands of dollars on grading last year. I mean, you couldn't do all that if I didn't like have a strong financial position outside of this. Or I could, but it would be a totally different risk dynamic. And I would approach, I'd be like Dan. I would be approaching it as a very methodical business, right?
Yeah,
It would be a
absolutely.
very I do. I mean, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I track everything. I'm very cognizant of margins. I'm very cognizant of my cost basis, all these things. I study the market a lot, study price history a lot, but it's all with a backdrop of a safety net. And maybe people won't want to hear that, and they'll say, well, you know, you can
Being too
only do
cautious.
this
Yeah.
because you have a savings account or whatever. I'm like, well, that's just me. Like, that's just how I operate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to apologize for it. So
Well, and like I said, it comes down to experience for some of us. Some of us it's just, you understand where things are going, and I have a savings account. I hate it. I've said that before on my videos. I hate a savings account. It does nothing. I lose money, but the money is always there in case of an emergency. My furnace dies or my refrigerator dies tomorrow. I can just pull out a savings and be able to cover that expense. I'm not taking loans and paying high interest amounts of money to do that. But that's the biggest thing is that like you said, you've got that safety net. You built a safety net behind you. And yeah, this last year I've put less money into Pokemon. I know I have. From
mhm.
2001, I didn't spend much. I had a big budget, but you start picking up those cheap deals. They were starting to come back at the end of 2021. 2022 was really a really slow year for myself, and it was more because of the safety net factor of it. I was chewing
Mm.
up more money because of the cost of groceries were going up, the cost of fuel was going up, my insurance went up. You know, you got all these expenses that were creeping up by, yeah, they say the national average was 8%, but I can tell you my household went up by about 21% for overall
Wow.
costs. Yeah, you say 8.5%, but
Yeah.
that's that's an average across the board on some things at the end of the day. So yeah, some things went up more. My grocery bill went up immensely, especially with three kids. I mean, they eat a lot more food. I mean, they're eating through a lot more, and it's amazing how much their grocery bill went from $150 a month or a week to all of a sudden $300 a week, and it's just crazy how much that eats up your safety nets. And you know,
And how fast it happens, right?
yeah, exactly.
Remember, don't you remember? You probably remember. You remember walking in the grocery store, and all of a sudden,
Yep,
all the prices of the things
just blew
you
up.
normally and it happened. And it's and this is where this whole and there's two things I'll say that related to that. Um, I started my own business, right? So I went from a business that makes money. How we made money in wealth management was a percentage of assets under management. So as you can imagine, over a very very long bull run, things are good. Client accounts are going up. We're bringing in new clients.
Mm-hmm.
The firm's very healthy, and I just made a salary. There were no commissions in our
Yeah,
business. We didn't do any of that BS freaking,
and two
selling
percent on every.
shares and
Yeah.
mutual funds with 5% loads. We didn't do any of that. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not how we operated. You had to have 5 million minimum, liquid investable assets to invest with a sophisticated like whatever. It was just a
Yeah.
different thing than being like a traditional, a kitchen table client type of investment advisor
Mm-hmm.
where the structures are different, right? But all that to be said, um, I had a good salary and I worked a lot. I worked a ton and I touched every facet of that business. I did when I started, I was like a roustabout, right? So I did the billing, I did the reporting, I did the investment models, I did financial plan, I did it all. But the reason that I say that is, I started this business with these guys, with my three co-founders. So there's four of us, team of 10 now. I took a pay cut. I mean, I did. I mean, you're working for a startup that's venture funded. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
have that much money and you have no sales to start because you're starting a company trying to sell something, right?
Yeah.
So actually 2022, and that's why I started to get more aggressive in the grading space for the sole intention, not sole, but like a much larger chunk intention of selling those graded cards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not because I like necessarily needed the money, but I knew like I could supplement my income, still collect, travel, do all the things I
Yep.
wanted to do, and all of it could be paid by cardboard, right? All of it. I could fund my investment account. I don't have a 401k at our work. I don't have, I could do it all funded from the hobby because a little bit of knowledge goes a long way here. And I happen to have a lot of knowledge and a little bit of time.
You can
So
fit it in
those
too.
things together, right? Yeah. And so it helped. I mean, obviously during the boom, it was, sell everything that's not nailed down if you can stomach to let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And identifying bubbles was something that, was not difficult for me based on being what I went back to is being a student of markets here, right? People don't
Yeah.
understand how fast these things happen and how they happen. I mean, most people explain to you what happened in 2008, right? And nor necessarily should they have to.
No.
If you're going to dabble in a dabble, if you're going to dabble in a what's purported to be a market, right?
Yep.
You have to study the history of that market and the history of other markets to understand how to be a market participant. Otherwise, you become the alpha investments Timmy because you haven't studied that market. You're just
Yeah.
it's like putting a blindfold on and walking into a
Mm-hmm.
room and trying to know what's going on. I mean, it's and maybe people are like, no, it's way simpler than that. Like that's fine, maybe, but this is why my uber conservative, like
Yeah. brain kicks in.
protectionism kind of comes in, right? I'm
Yep.
like, come on, like put in the effort and try to,
Yep.
learn a little bit. And I don't want to come off as pretentious or overbearing in that, but I worry about people not doing that.
Yeah.
So 2022 was a great year for me. Honestly, from a hobby standpoint, from a collecting standpoint, and from a side business standpoint. It was
Yeah.
all around
Well, I don't want to say it was
fantastic.
a bad year for 2022 for me. It was just the hobby became more self sustaining than it was in previous years. Because typically I used to take money from my house in order to,
Yeah.
so in even opening wise, I didn't open as much product. I
Mhm.
usually did opening videos and things like that. In 2021, I was still doing a lot of opening videos, but in 2022, I stopped opening because, instead of taking that money, I used to take $400 on every set and buy a
Yep.
booster box, a couple ETBs, a couple, 3-pack blister, and all the different things, and open all of it. And I have completely, even Crown Zenith. I love the set. It's a lot of fun. I've opened 2 ETBs. I just,
Yeah.
I just can't. I would rather keep it sealed and that way personally than sit there and try and open this and just spend the money on a gamble. That's
So
going more to the security of keeping things relative in price rather
yeah.
than taking the gamble to try. Yeah, I might get that $200 Garantina card out of there, but I could also get nothing out of this thing and end up with $20 worth of card. Maybe the alternate art or the glaring gallery and stuff, and get $10 to $22 worth of cards for a $50 ETB. It just doesn't justify. And if you have money where you can bring it from your household in to do more, then you're not too concerned about opening some of those packs and just having to gamble at it. But the gambling kind
But
of went away in 2022.
but maybe you should be right, because maybe you shouldn't, like, just because you have the capacity to bring that money in doesn't mean you should. So I did the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I used to open and buy, like I would open several to half a dozen to more boxes of like every
Yeah.
Japanese set. And
Okay.
there's like because everything's split,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a million sets, right? I mean,
Yeah.
since Dream League, I've been doing that, right? On and on. I skipped a couple there probably, but and I went back for them anyway before the boom. But all that to be said, I did, 2022, I did all breaks. So that's how I enjoyed modern Japanese, right? That's how I enjoyed modern Pokemon, was I opened it for other people.
Yep.
And before everyone's like, "Oh, you're a whatnot scammer." No, I just would. I do sell singles on whatnot for Weiss, because it's a great platform to do that. Cool people over there. But no, I would just like be the lowest on the market and pre-sell it on Instagram and open it
Yep.
live on YouTube. And that way I got to enjoy it. People had a lot of fun. I got to make content. I mean, it was great. But I even skipped some sets because honestly, like I've been working 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
Like I'm building a business and it is not easy. I mean, I really shouldn't be spending any time on the hobby. And that's why my content has taken such a step back in kind of the second half of
Yeah.
2022. There's a lot going, like it's, it's difficult. You got to prioritize.
I stepped back too. I mean, I was between the farm, the business, and everything was just kind of all culminating. And I was doing lives 2, 3 times a week sometimes. I was jumping in on lives, was involved a lot in the content. I didn't do
Yeah.
a live from August all the way until January this year.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, mentally and time wise, I just could not give that much more time. You have to learn where that break is, and otherwise you're just going to burn yourself right out. If you try and
Yeah.
over push, you're going to burn yourself out on one or if not everything you're doing, and then you don't want to do any of it, and that's not a good place to be either.
Yeah. Because one of the most important things is, are you actually taking the time to enjoy all of this,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
As a content creator or a seller, flipper, investor, buyer, trader in this hobby, are you taking the time to, take a look at one of your cards and actually appreciate it? And honestly, sometimes that gets a little lost in the sauce when you got, a million cards coming in and out from grading companies, and you're trying to sell and you're trying to do all these things in your, normal life and run a business and have a
Yeah.
family and see your friends. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, go to events and do all these things, which is why I think some of the in-person stuff has been the best, right? Because it gives you a lot of
Yeah.
crossover there, right? You don't feel as stuck in your own head or stuck in your own, for me, I live alone. So it's like kind of very, it's collecting's always been for me, like by
Hmm.
myself. I did sports with my dad. I do art with my mom, but like everything else, all the pop culture stuff has always just really been me, like one or two friends that aren't here. Even with, I got a hometown shop that's like the biggest Weiss distributor in the US. Basically, they're the reason that Weiss is in English in the US. They worked with Bushiroad to bring it over here. And I've been going there since I moved back here in 2015 on the Weiss side. And, even with that, I would just go in there and buy a pack or two. And, I was studying for different financial exams for CFA and CFP, which was financial analyst, financial planning. And that it's a lot of money to take those tests and stuff. So all my time and money was tied up in that. I wasn't, spending a lot of time buying packs, playing any of the TCGs, spending time with community. Um, and so all that to be said, that's why I think some of the live events have been the best, because we're starting to see this come out in earnest, right? And really like see what it looks like, and it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I want people to continue to focus on that, and just enjoy it, instead of having so much anxiety over the money of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, yeah, I enjoy everything. I enjoy Pokemon. I enjoy going through the cards. I love holding on to them and doing those kind of things. It's definitely a lot of fun. And I don't ever want to get to a point in this hobby where it's just all about money. Because if it gets to
Yeah.
that point, there are a lot better ways to make money than sit here and do it in Pokemon. Unless you get lucky and you can spend a lot of time, I can make a lot more money in my business. I can make a lot more money on my farm. I could make another business and go do something else in another sector and probably make more money than what I could do here. So overall, this is just fun. I love the hobby. I love the community. I think that's the most fun that I have about doing Pokemon. It isn't Pokemon's fun, but it's a segue into this community, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. I love the discussions. I love the personalities in here. There's not too many that are toxic. It's a lot of fun to have just discussions. And like I've said before on other things, all of us are willing to tell you about anything if you just stop and talk to us. None of us are really all pent up where we will not have a discussion until you get away. We don't want to talk to you. You know, that's just a fact of how most of us are at the end of the day.
Mm.
So, um, probably move on to number two question of the day. The first ones are
Oh,
always long because it's always good because you
yeah.
get all of this discussion about what's happening in life. And it is actually really important because you can hear all the things that you're thinking and doing. So I always let these first few questions really just go because you get more bits and pieces the longer that someone talks about things that are going on. So next one I got here is what progression did you make in Pokemon before really focusing on graded cards?
Team sealed, baby. Team
Team
sealed.
sealed.
I would. I had a vault full of Japanese booster packs that I picked up over the years. I For Pokemon specifically, that's what I really liked the most. I mean, I love the cards. I've been grading sports cards since I was like 12. So that's why I really like Beckett, because I always interfaced with them for sports cards. My uncle used to help put on these like sports card shows here. So I was exposed at an early age to like the vendors and the cases and all those things. So I had a lot of sports cards, especially football and basketball. Like we would get booster box. Like I never got booster boxes of Pokemon. I got packs.
Yeah.
We would get booster boxes of sports. So I interfaced a lot with sports. I was an athlete my entire life. Um, had a lot of exposure to art through my mom. She's a huge art collector. Um, and then in Pokemon specifically, I really progressed from opening packs as a kid and largely playing Pokemon Yellow. I mean, just obsessively I still on my phone have an emulator so I can
I do
play it.
too.
I mean, it's like, and that's one thing I still don't have in my collection that I really want is a nice graded copy. I've had the
Yeah.
opportunity, but they just weren't quite right. I wanted a certain way and a certain grade and all those things. But yellow is super, super important to me. It's that the gym leaders, the anime. That's why I've been obsessed with collecting the gym sets and collecting the non-TCG prism cards with like all the characters on it from the anime and all those like these guys right here, the original peelable card, right? So this was
Yep.
a hidden prism like that ditto. You've got Misty back there with Togepi. It's stuff like that, right? Where I would collect things like that, but largely I was collecting sealed. Just obsessed with Japanese sealed. The Japanese pack arts are bar none the coolest things ever. The Japanese half decks are all super dope. There's just like they're so beautiful. It's always been about the art for me as a collector. So that's what I was always drawn to. I felt like the Watsy packs were a little, I mean, it's cool, it's nostalgic, but it's a little boring compared to the Japanese side.
Yeah.
So, um, have had a lot of Japanese sealed pieces. Southern Islands is my favorite set, so I have all those sealed on the Japanese, and most um, don't have an English anymore, but I'll get one back eventually. But then, I really, started to grade more cards and buy graded cards. And then, like I said, really into 20, late 2020, started to just start grading a lot more. Then when CGC got into full swing, that totally changed the game for me. And we can talk more about that in some of the other questions. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm a seal guy, man, and I didn't open that stuff for a long time. And then when I started making content, I just started ripping packs. Like I went full degen mode. I mean, just stuff that I never would open. I was like, yeah, now that it's 15 times more valuable, yes, I should definitely open it
This
for
is
the
the
cards
time to
that
rip that
feel
open
the
now.
same. This is the time.
This
Yeah.
is
So
it. Now that I
I
can make
did.
money after this stuff, now I'm gonna rip
Uh,
it.
yeah. Let me just burn some dollars every time I open a pack. But I did get to do a really cool on my 30th birthday. I like sold out a vintage break of a bunch of my Japanese, but we opened like a dozen Japanese packs. It was super fun. So that's been because like it's not worth opening if I'm not going to get to enjoy it with anyone
No,
else. Like
might as well
that's
do it
the
on
whole
live.
point, right? So
See, I get the advantage. I get to open it with my kid, so I just
so cool.
justify that as I'm opening it with somebody, so I
Core
don't have to pull
memories,
a camera out
buddy.
every time.
Yeah, exactly. It is hard. I go back to my grandma just passed away a couple of weeks ago, and I go back to like I was thinking about her house and how I would just like lie on the living room floor and open packs of Team Rocket, right? That's why I
No.
fell in love with Himeno was because of the Charmander in Team Rocket.
Okay.
That's like that card is like what I remember from being a kid opening those packs and seeing that artwork probably most vividly. And then selling cards at her garage sales and all these things. But um, I think that I don't really remember why I started to say that, but great memory, core
It
memories,
is. Yeah,
So
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
like I've said in previous lives and everything. I mean, I still remember core memories of playing this, you know, with friends, and I know a couple of them aren't even with us any longer because of things that have happened in life. And you sit there and you remember playing in the tournaments, having fun, relaxing with friends. Like you said, I remember three, four of us would go together and put in 15, $20 and go buy the latest booster boxes of Pokemon or get two of them or whatever the sale was on some of them, and sitting in his basement, and we would just sit there and rip packs because we were A, building decks, or B, just trying to see if we could grab the newest holo so we could go to the card shop and trade for a card we needed, or if you wanted to trade for a binder piece or things like that. But yeah, like I said, that's where I always laugh about Jungle. And anybody that opened Jungle packs back in the day remembers that by the time you were done doing like a box of those things, you're just covered in confetti. Them packs were just horrible when it came down to it. And I've
Shredder.
even been trying to buy some jungle cards, for grading purposes and stuff, and you find them really nice. And the other thing is too is that the quality of them back then was just so bad that even like the edges, the hollow sticks out the edges because the cutter
Yeah.
went through and like ripped. the
The
paper
silvering
off
and
the
stuff.
hollow on the edges.
Oh yeah.
So you got the whole hollow ring around the outside of the actual card, and it's like, why?
Why?
Why
Why?
didn't you
I
shorten
will
the
give Watts.
blades?
I will give Watsy one thing. The packs, at least, we couldn't do anything about the printing, but the packs themselves were a little more durable than the
Yeah,
front.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, and the hollow on the front. So you do, higher quality cards than Watsy, but sometimes you get some issues there where, someone had it at the bottom of a box in a basement for 20 years and you bought it and you got a fat ring dent on the front of the pack when you get it. You're never opening that one. It's just not going to be worth it. But
No.
uh, yeah, I think for collecting, unique sealed pieces are super fun for me.
Hmm.
I really like it. And I have a bunch of modern sealed that's just nothing that I assign value to. Just like, I got the EV Heroes gym box, I got Dream League and up boxes over there of every set. You know, I just, from the Japanese sealed side, I just really enjoy the box art and always enjoyed those sets. I have binders of all those sets from opening them. I mean, that's what I like to do. But then I got, started grading a lot more. And man, I just started falling in love with grading with CGC. We can definitely talk about that more for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and we can get down and we can go through some of these things when this, we can talk about that when you're focusing on grading cards and things like that, your final decisions and things, and where you went on that. Next one we got is what's the length of time that you did to get to where you are in the hobby now?
Yeah, I mean from like a selling market standpoint. I mean, it took me a good mm, late. So like so this is how I think about it, right? So I've been interfacing with the hobby on and off since the beginning, right?
Hmm.
Fits and spurts, 2000s a little bit, 2014, 15, 16, then off again, then back on 2019, 20 till now. From a social media standpoint, from a following that directly ties to my, I would guess, my business side of it,
Hmm.
it probably took me a good year to really get to the point where I felt comfortable like monetizing against that following or trying to sell anything or doing breaks and all that. But I think that my collective experiences buying and selling a variety of collectibles, including Pokemon, over my whole life. Like I said, from anything from a garage sale when I was a kid to I flipped art during the pandemic. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff in all in between, right? I've sold a lot of sports memorabilia, sports cards. Used to collect. They ended up being very valuable, but who cares? I used to be a huge bobblehead collector, sports bobbleheads, like just dozens and dozens and dozens of them. I'm down to like five now. But surprisingly, don't like Funkos. I just think they're weird. But
Never gotten into
yeah,
Funkos.
yeah, just the eyes, they weird me out. I have two now, because my coworker, my co-founder got me a really cool one, and then I needed the pair to it, so now I have two. But yeah, I mean, from that business side, it took me, a while to get comfortable bound, really, especially because you know, I launched my Instagram and then my YouTube all around that financial literacy, don't make bad decisions standpoint, right? So I
Yeah,
felt conflicted around then trying to turn around and
sell
immediately
to them.
sell. Yeah. And so I passively is the wrong word, but kind of was selling through all that time, but also observing a very bad series of decisions by most people. And
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, I was buying through that whole time too. Like, I mean, I made dumb decisions kind of, but it was like net, right? Like you were funding it all from the hobby anyway.
yeah.
So it didn't feel real. It was a very weird time, honestly. It was very surreal in a lot of ways, but Um, yeah, so it took me a little bit to get comfortable around, even just doing breaks and then eventually into, here's my eBay, here's story sales, here's all those things. Um, but it's also because I just kind of, I could, it's like we said, or talked about earlier, like I could just turn off the spigot tomorrow. From a sales standpoint, it doesn't really, it's just fun. It's challenging. I've made wicked cool relationships through buying and selling, like
Yeah.
crazy, like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon type of stuff. Like it's crazy, bro. It's like wild. All these, and it's a much smaller pool than we might think we're swimming in. And then on my professional side, I start to get connected to, people who have interfaced with some of the highest level collectors in this hobby, like lawyers and stuff. It's just, it's wild. So,
Uh,
yeah, but it definitely took me a while to get comfortable around that. So, but in and out for a long time. Wouldn't trade that time for anything.
no, it's a lot of fun. At the end of the day, if this hobby is just fun, it's cool, it's interesting, it's always evolving and changing, and like you sit there and I always laugh. You go from my perspective. I left in '06.
Mhm.
I did Pokemon Go, but I didn't get back into the trading card game back in 2016. I kind of looked at it and I just never did because I was busy building a business and doing a lot of other things at that point in time. Plus, my son was just a year old at that point, so it's like, yeah, I'm not willing to go to that direction right now just because of where I was in life. And then you go to 2019 and you open your first Unbroken Bonds pack, and it's like all of a sudden you pull a rainbow card, and you're just like, what is this? you know, you go from the best card being a hollow, realistically, to what Pokemon became by 2019. Even it's just
Yeah,
like,
dude. That was like
oh,
opening Dream League, Cosmic Eclipse, right?
oh
And
yeah,
being like, yo, character rares?
yeah,
What is
Trader Gallery,
this?
what? Shiny like the shiny Charizard, the hidden fates, and shiny cards. Holy cow!
God.
Going full art cards and all that appeared in between there. It's just crazy to see the change that happened in, well, it was 13 years. I mean, realistically, 13 years. It still was there, still alive, and still moving, and what it's evolved to. And it's kind of interesting of what will look like in another 10 years.
Yeah.
From where we are right now. That's
Yeah, I
just a cool
think that
thought.
it's exciting, right? Because
Hmm.
there's so many people, whether they're, how many people were a part of the hobby before or not. Now it's just so much more public, right? So
Yeah.
that I think creates momentum in the hobby for really cool things to happen. I mean, the amount of events by like not by Pokemon, just by all these third parties that they're
Oh
starting
yeah.
to do from your Collecticon to, Leonhardt's event and Card Party and like all these
Mhm.
things that start to bring the community together in a real live way. It's it's creating a lot of stickiness at least for a while, right? Now major, and here's the thing, we talk about it too, right? We're like, okay, major macroeconomic events and issues could lead to, the market side of this hurting, but it's also like the same thing that happened during the pandemic, right? It's that people crave a place of safety and fun and nostalgia when they're, in pain or having
Mhm.
uh, troubles or what have you. So I think that there's some staying power for the hobby itself. How that looks for the cards specifically and like the market side, who really knows, right? It's very
Yeah.
difficult
But
to predict that.
we may definitely continue to have more people if the economy gets rough. Monetary wise, yes, it may drop, but on the other hand, you may see more people enter the hobby. You
Yeah, more
might see
engagement.
new faces, new ideas, new ideals coming in that could
Yeah,
surface just because, like you said, it's comforting. Sometimes it's comforting just to be in a community of people that
yeah,
are like-minded, enjoying the same thing, talking about the same thing as what you're doing. But on the other hand, it's also a place of refuge for some people. It's a way to get away from the stresses outside of what in their homes and everything, to just come in and relax, listen to a live, listen to people talk about what's happening in the market. talk about what they've picked up and the cards they're finding and the deals they're seeing and the plays that are out there that are potentials are always really sometimes just comforting just to watch, listen to. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to do them, but just hearing
Right.
them is cool.
It for me, full disclosure, right? I like to have a podcast on or a long form, like one of your
Hmm.
videos, like one of these or whatever, because it kind of it keeps the voices in your head at bay, right? It keeps
Yeah.
the sometimes it helps you turn off the a very I have a very hyperactive mind, right? I operate at a
Hmm.
very certain level, and sometimes I have to try to just quell that just for a small amount of time to like not get totally burnt out on
Yeah.
my life and my business and all those things. And that's why, like, honest, someone who did not ever envision sharing the fact that I collected with really anyone other than very close friends, if even that. Um, that's why I have zero time for like the negativity, strife, like talking heads in this hobby, because I like my time is just too valuable, and my
Yep.
emotional energy is too like important for me to utilize elsewhere for me to like spend any time on any of that stuff, because it's like it's freaking shiny cardboard. Like
Yeah.
I'm here to have fun. Like I said, I could turn off the selling spigot tomorrow. I could turn off the whole, I could just be rebranded name. I could just be Connor in Discord, and I don't have to have a YouTube channel. I don't have to have an
Yep.
Instagram. I don't have to have any of that. And I can interface with this awesome community, as just a normal whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just a normal dude. Like I just happen to like to hear myself talk. So now I'm on camera, right? Like
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's why like I get it. You can't ignore the bad parts of your community because it's how you improve your community. But you also can't like just take a constant stance of like negativity and strife. Otherwise, you don't really belong in that community. You're just there for derision. So that's why I just don't really partake in that, because honest, and it just sounds bad, but I just don't like it's just not worth it to me in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
And
There's
see,
zero mental space in my head for that when I'm doing the things that I'm doing outside of
yeah.
here.
And I'm the same way when it comes down to the, negative. At one point, when you're first in the space and you tend to try and be involved, sometimes you get involved into that drama stuff. And I
Yeah.
know at the end of 2021, I just said, I got in the middle of one of it and I just said, enough. I'm done. You're not going to hear any more of this on my channel. You can do whatever you want on your channels. You can say whatever you want on your channels. I'm not engaging in it anymore. It's just not worth my time that I could be putting towards my content, that I could be putting towards my community, that I could be more worried about what's happening in the market or what's happening right now on the card front or new sets or the playability of things, when I'm actually just spending way too much time focusing on what this guy said on his YouTube channel about something I said on one of his comments about something that it's just, you could sit here all day and go back and forth on this. And yeah, I know, like we said, you see these channels and they seem to balloon really fast sometimes because people like to get involved with that negativity. A lot of times or that drama. Like I said, it's like watching The Bachelor. My wife watches that show, and it's like I don't understand how you can even stand the drama and all the crap going on when I'm in the room. It's like I can't even do it. It's like you guys like drama, and I get it, but it's like that's no way to build a community. At the end of the day, is just having all that. I'd rather have a nice community of individuals who have respect for each other. And if we disagree, I'm great with disagreements. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem. You can disagree with my point. You may have a source that says the exact opposite of what my source does. It happens, depending on distributor, depending on who you talk to. Those things can all change and vary. But at the end of the day, I'd rather have a discussion about it than have someone come on and say, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. Do this, do exactly the opposite of what this person said. It's just not worth engaging that and getting involved into
No,
that kind of issues because
there
we
should
can
just be a
disagree.
level of respect. Yeah, you can disagree respectfully with people, and
Yeah.
like none of it matters that much.
No.
Like none of and now and why I think about it now, and why over the past, look, I think that during a lot of people had life-changing wealth come into their life because of collections they had and things they were able to do during the peak, right?
Yep.
And everyone always wants to, like, chase the quick buck, hot shiny object, the quick play, right? Like,
Yep.
uh, and I did well in Pokemon. I did much better in digital assets. I got very lucky. Luck is sometimes a function of a little bit of knowledge and timing and a little bit of skill and luck. So, it's all wrapped together. But anyway, it's the same thing in that space, right? Where that's why it takes such this like conservative, not polarizing, not overly um overly positive isn't the right word, but overly like kind of bullish stance on anything in this hobby, because I honestly think that most of the like the how do I put this, there's we're so deep in this hobby, right? So like we talk about all these easy plays, right? Like especially with grading cards, people are like, it's you can buy this dollar card in Japan all day long. You can put it in plastic and you can sell it for 50 to $100 and you can do it over and over and over. And there's not the opportunity isn't arbed away. Well, largely it's because the dollars aren't like big enough for institutional money to care, come in and arb it away, right? It's like,
Yeah.
look, to really do that at scale, for that, and why I say that is like those are easy to us, but like on the outside, someone coming in, the easy money for those people, I think, who aren't super engaged and haven't been super engaged in this hobby, has been made already, right?
Yeah.
And that's shifting, right? And it's shifting to who's winning in this hobby now and who's not. And that is why I take such a conservative nature on it. Because on the one side, like I am making these plays, like I grade a lot for myself. I grade a lot to sell. I've done just fine, whatever. But there's very specific areas of this hobby that I think people just need to understand that if it was as easy as everyone like said it was, it wouldn't be there. And like
Yep.
I think, and it goes back to that, like what I was trying to say earlier in the podcast was like, um, with the whole, this is the hard part, right? It's like there, because the market's so inefficient and fragmented, you can get the opportunity to sell something when like you can get lucky on timing, right? But largely in most scenarios in this hobby, if for me, like most cards that I grade, there's probably someone who graded it cheaper and got the raw card for cheaper
Yep.
and can sell it for cheaper. But because of how this market works, there's a tremendous amount of liquidity right now across very fragmented channels, right? I mean, we see it all the time, right? I buy a card for $30 on PWCC and I sell it for 150 the next week on eBay.
Yep.
Why does that happen? Because people just don't know, right? And it just like the buyer pool is very weird and different, and it might just be a one-time purchase gift for someone, so they'll buy it for 150 there. They're not, this collector chasing this whole set who needs to get everything under $30 so they have a certain budget for 100 cards, or it's so there's so much going on there. And all that to be said, like there's always someone who has a better position than you, or you should operate from the space of there's always someone who has a better position than you, a lower entry point, lower fees, better tax structure, more capital to work with. And that's why I want people to be careful, because I think you can get lucky on executing on a sale at a certain time, but that's like, as the hobby grows, it will inevitably get more difficult to do that. I don't know how it'll look, but and then at the end of the day, like, is a booster box going from $110 to $135 over 6 months changing your life?
Yeah.
Is it? Like, is grading a card for $15 that you bought for 5 and selling it for 50, is that $30 changing your life? Like, you could have just not done something in your life and saved that money from a rash, like a silly expense, and done it over a quicker time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, how do we really value our time, right? Our time put into this, the mental, I mean, I spend far too much mental energy on this hobby, right? And we'll get into
Yeah.
kind of the, you know, the hourly thing and whatever, but
Yep.
it's, you know, it's hard, right? Because a lot of it's just fun, but then
Yep.
there's that business side of it, right? So how much of it is me just having fun and like looking for stuff for me to buy, and how much of it is I am scouring through saved searches and reading through, you know, E4 forums and understanding, you know, watching the price history, like figuring out plays, identifying whatever, blah, 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 strategically figuring out which grading company to use, all those things. And there's like those two different sides of it, right? And that gets a little muddied when you talk about, you know, how much time you're spending on this. So
Yeah. And
the
that's
big,
always it. I mean, you don't realize how much when you. That's always why that question can get a little sticky sometimes, because sometimes for a lot of us, it's really hard to separate. Okay, I'm doing this for the business aspect to make money, and I'm doing this because, well, I want, the graded cards behind me to finish my collection. And
yeah,
while I was looking at those graded cards to finish my collection on PWCC, I found 6 undervalued cards that I ended up buying. So now, was that time spent on my business or was that on my collected part?
literally
It,
did it today.
I did the exact same thing the other day. I'm like, oh wow, there's some, what the heck were they're Pikachu cards. I was going through some of the Pikachu Japanese promo cards, and it was like
Yep,
nobody was bidding on them, and it's
yep,
like they were like
yep.
$12, and I'm like, well, I'll put them for
Put
18
them
because they're
in.
selling for 125 right now in the market, and I got all of
Some,
them I got all 6 of them I bid on just because nobody bid on them, but
yep.
that's just it. I mean, that I did that last Sunday, and it was like,
True.
but now I was looking for Flareon cards because my goal is to try and get every Flareon card in a PSA. And right now, my goal is just get any
Right.
grade I want. I don't care what the grade is right now. I just want to get them all. So I'm on a mission this year to complete that set. And then as I see them come up and I've got more money and more expendable money to put into it, I'll buy the PSA 10. I'll try and upgrade them as I go. That's kind of my goal, is to get them in, and then I can upgrade as I go. But that's where I was at. I was looking for Flareon cards that were, maybe undervalued or to finish my PSA collecting. And I ran into the Pikachu ones. And it's like, okay, well now, like I said, you could sit there and go, was that my business time or was that my collection time that I just accidentally tripped into a business opportunity? It's just, it's
Yep.
just, that's where that question, I always laugh. It gets really difficult because it's really hard to keep clarity between this and that. And it's just, like I said, it's fun. But going back,
That's so funny. I looked at all the Flareon cards on PWCC today. Actually, that's really funny.
back
I
off.
saw one of my interest. And I'm like, ah, shit. Now I gotta look at all of them.
Yeah, that's been my goal. Is
It's
just
my
I've been on a
thing. I love
mission that every month I try and pick up a couple of the ones I'm missing. I just picked up the playing card. That was one of them that I was
it.
got that at a
All
PSA.
for both languages.
I'm working on both languages. Yeah, I got English and Japanese. I'm working on both of them, and like the tops. I mean, I'm talking like tops, the playing cards.
This one probably counts.
I need to get that one. I just saw that one pass through a couple weeks ago, but it won't wait. It was a PSA 9, and it went a lot higher than what I was willing to break on
That
it.
that card exploded. I don't know what happened.
I think that the PSA 9, I think it went up for almost $500, $400 on that card on PWCC. Some two people were fighting over it.
Man, now you're gonna make me want to sell that card. I really like
Well,
that
just be
card.
cautious. That's why I'm warning you. It was two people fighting over it, and I was the third guy in on it, and I just went,
And then the market falls out the next week because it only
exactly.
takes two.
So
It
now
only
I
takes
was looking on
two.
eBay. I haven't looked on eBay, but I bet you it's probably running half that, or if not at. You could probably
Yeah,
get a 10 for that price, more than likely.
probably. Yeah, it
Probably.
gets
I mean, if you were to
weird.
go look on eBay, that's why I got out. I'm just like, yeah, you two are fighting on it all through the extended. It's
That's the weird thing about, first of all, by the way, did you see that PWCC for the month of February, there's
suspended
no,
that.
you don't, yeah, they suspended,
Yep.
extended, or having to pre-bid, which is cool. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But
I think they're trying it to see how it goes. I think that they're
yeah,
using it as a promotional thing, but I think that they want to know if they could get away from that extended and just go. I like it and I don't like it in some
I think it's
ways.
going to lead to higher sales prices potentially,
That's what I'm
right?
thinking is you're going to get people that are going to show up and just sit back and watch and see. Yeah, other good thing is that I do like about it is that you can then kind of play if you are for the sales side of things. You could wait and see. Okay, nobody's bidding on this. Okay, it went into the first extension because you always get the first initial bid,
Yep.
and then it goes into the first extension anyways. And then if nobody's bidding on it at that point, you could then try and put your bid into it then. Where if you hadn't bid before, you wouldn't be able to be in on it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
It's
could
why a lot of the values are very low now on a Friday versus how like a lot of $10, $12 cards that could go to a
yeah.
thousand, just
And a lot of times you see them go for $14, $16 because yeah, someone just put in a bid in order to make them eligible to continue
yeah,
to
I
play
do it
with it.
all the time. I've won
Yep,
a bunch of random stuff like that and
I
it,
know.
really works out.
I've won a
Um,
lot of 12 10 $12 cards on there that were actually decent on the secondary market just because I
yeah,
wanted the eligibility to be in on it. And I just like you said, you accidentally win it because it goes in the
yeah.
extended and nobody went for it.
Yeah, I've done some cool, forget where it is. Yeah, there's some stuff on there that is, especially because now a lot of people look for Weiss on there, and now people have started putting Weiss on PWCC. So
Because
side note.
that was one of my
Oh yeah,
more
1997 card ass baby. It's a
yeah,
great set.
it's a
It's a
4,
great
but
set.
like I said, I wasn't too concerned about the grade. I picked it up. That was an accidental. I just put
Oh,
it in there so I could get into the. I bought it for $10.
that's freaking awesome.
It
I'm
was
looking at
just
all my Clarions over here now. Do
yeah,
you have the black and white promo? The one with
yes,
all of them? Oh yeah, I love that card.
yeah.
I
I got
love
the
that.
promo. I got a bunch of Jap. I'm about 50-50 on Japanese and English right now. Gold Star. I want to try and get a Gold Star by the end of the year.
I
Yep,
love this Flareon.
that's one of
This
them I
one,
got to get.
PWCC. I got it for nothing.
This one I got outside of PSA just because I had to get it.
I was looking at that card today on PWCC. I love
Yeah,
that card.
so I got the
Yeah, I
Delta
haven't had
Species
that
one. That
one.
was a nice pickup. But all right, back
Yeah.
to focus. Focus. Focus.
Focus.
Focus. Talk about
Oh,
Flareons for the next 2 hours.
no, dude. Not Hollow
Um,
Jungle Flareon, my favorite. Oh.
next thing we got here is what was your final deciding factor before starting to focus on graded cards?
Yeah, I think it was just so from like a selling standpoint, it was that it just was like for not that much effort, I can grade everything I want to for my personal collection, pay for all of it with the excess cards, and make some good side income to then go buy, and go buy a stupid heavy pack of something to open at an event or go pay for my Collecticon ticket or it was like I like it just creates more financial freedom. Like really that's what it was. And I get to interface with so much cool stuff, so many amazing cards. I only to a flaw grade stuff that I would be okay getting stuck with, which means I only grade cards I want to, and I only grade them with the companies I want to and the way I want to, which is to my financial detriment, right? Because when grading this card costs twice as much to do it with subgrades, but I have no
Yep.
intention of owning it without subgrades, and I got to send every other bulk card in with subgrades to hit
Yep.
that bulk minimum. A CGC 9.5 Japanese character rare with subgrades with $30 into it is you're upside down on it,
Yep. You're
right?
losing.
So you know what? That's okay because I like it and I'm okay having that, and I'm not okay having it in a PSA slab in a 9 or an 8 or even a 10 when I don't like. I just which is stupid, right? If I was a business, I wouldn't do it that way.
No.
But for me as a collector, it was, how can I I never have to put money into the hobby again. ever. I never have to bring outside because there's nothing I want that badly that I would have to. Like I
Yeah.
don't I think I just can't stomach spending on a lot of these things now that the prices are where they're at. The most expensive thing I probably bought recently was a signed Harry Potter book. Like, and I was like, oh, this pains me, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna do it for me. But yeah, that was really it. Is I just was like, okay, this is how I get to still participate in this hobby. This
Yep.
is how I still get to collect. I have to fund it from the hobby because there's no way that something I was buying for $5 that now I have to buy for $75 that I'm going to do that. Like I'm just too there. Like I just won't do it. I won't collect it because I don't value I like, I think about it sometimes. Like I'm like, holy cow, like a $300 card, like that's my flight to Chicago from my good friend's wedding. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just like when you start to put it in those terms, I'm like, there's no way. Like, I have to continue to self fund this and beyond, right? And then also, like I said, it is a good way to supplement income when you're pouring money into a business you're building.
Yeah.
And it, obviously allows me to engage with all these people and like have a ton of fun. I mean, the fact that I'm nobody, right? I got like 750 subscribers on YouTube. I got 3,000 on IG. I'm never gonna like, it's never gonna matter like monetarily. It's just for being connected to all those people. Like that's a huge part of it too. As I like it maybe wasn't the final deciding factor, but after that final deciding factor, it's what keeps me doing it, right?
Yeah.
What keeps me doing it is how much fun I have doing. I mean, grading is my favorite part of the hobby. The feeling of grading cards and getting those returns back is the number one way I enjoy interfacing with the hobby. Um, so it's like it's a win-win-win-win. I mean, every part of it is
Yeah.
fine, other than the CGC 9.5, character rares from Japanese, dream or battle region. But whatever, like you
Yeah.
eat that, you eat your L's, and you move on. So you crack it and you put it in a binder and you pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah. You just walk away. Um, yeah, because I mean, honestly, you did it faster than I did, but that's kind of the direction on where I've done a video recently this year. That's kind of the direction that I'm going to be moving more into. Also, is into the graded market. Haven't done anything with gradient since 2019.
Hmm.
Early 2020. My last submission took almost 18 months to get back from PSA. I was one of the ones that was stuck right at submitted my last one in October or beginning of November of 2020,
Yeah,
and kind of put a bad taste in my mouth when it came down to grading because of how many opportunities I missed with them cards being stuck in
yeah,
queue. But definitely going back into it, I did the same kind of analysis you did. If you can, it's a little bit more of a gamble. It's a little bit more work trying to source those cards. It's a little bit more of skill. I'm gonna have to use more of my skills to pre-grade and put
yep,
the best cards I can out, or at least make the safety nets that I need on those cards. That I know if they
yeah,
do accidentally come back as a 9 because I missed something or did something, that there's still a sellable market for that
mhm,
particular card that I can still at least
right,
break even, if not make 5-6% on that sale. So, there's a lot of things. It's going to use a lot more of my skill set. It's going to going back to my skill set of what I started out doing in early 2020 all the way up until that whole shutdown. Um, but overall, I see the potentials being a lot better than just sealed. Because, I mean, sealed is good, but like you said, you're making such tight margins sometimes, and if you need to sell it quickly, it's not there yet, and it's a lot of waiting for that maturity to happen on
mm,
sealed. Sealed's more of a maturity game. You're waiting for product to mature and age out to where it becomes valuable or more valuable, unless you get lucky. One set like Evolving Skies will do a breakaway where you can do it right away, but in general, there's a potential that we could go back to 2019, 2018, 17 market where they don't gain
yeah,
value for years. They
yeah,
could sit there,
yeah,
you could have Astral Radiance, Lost Origins, and Silver Tempest sitting on your shelf for 5 years and maybe make, 30 bucks on it. When
Yeah, could be
right now the
zero after inflation
it could be
and
completely chewed up.
taxes. It could be nothing, and that's why. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off,
that's
but
fine.
for me, it's like yes. So it takes. I found that like somehow, luckily, I'm super OCD
Hmm.
and very detail
Yep.
oriented, which makes me good at math and finance and like all those things. Also makes me pretty good at pre-grading. It's what
Yep.
I've been hard luck here with, right? Just because I'm like nuts about it, right? And I mean, the spreadsheets I have going back of pre-grading all four subgrades, putting it, market prices, potential ROI, all like it's the work you gotta, put it. There became a point where it was like, nope, send it, just put in plastic, it doesn't matter, send
Yep.
it,
Just
get it
go.
out the door. It's especially with Japanese, you're like, yep, it's fine. Like I probably, I,
Came in
you
sleeve.
know,
It's going out in the
the,
same sleeve. Just get the
the
grade in
margin.
plastic so I can sell it.
Yeah, the margin of safety is built into
Yep.
the basically the standard deviation around the quality of print run, right?
Yep.
Like you just kind of know it's going to happen.
Hmm.
And with that, um, oh, what I was going to say is it's like it's about churn. Like for me, it's about churn. I said this on like a podcast I did a while ago with Rob, and Colson was on, and I think I maybe another live I talked about it too, but like I just we talked about this. Like I think that medium to long term basis, so 3 to 25, 30 years, anywhere over that time frame, right? Even anything, in Pokemon, it's weird, right? And in TCGs, it's right because the markets can change so
Yep.
fast. So, but like, let's just say over years, right? Um, I am not confident that anything I own and like because I don't own the highest end of the market. I don't own any trophy cards. I don't own any, illustrators or trophy pikas or
Yeah.
the most sought after, the rarest, the just the upper echelon, even your first edition Charizard in some ways, right? That's more that the demand will not always, but has supported that over time. Those top pieces of the hobby, very narrow top piece.
Yep.
Those, in this is, and we talked about it before the podcast, and I'm just going to lay it out again because I've said this before and I want to make it clear to people. As you study collectibles markets, okay, most collectibles markets, whether it's coins or art or whiskey or whatever, cars, vintage cars, all those things, the vast majority of that collectible vertical, right? That bucket will either keep up with inflation as a store of value, meaning if inflation is going up 5% a year, that collectible will go up 5% a year. And
Right.
basically, you can, in real terms, make zero money from it, but it held its value, right?
Yep.
So if today eggs are $5 a dozen and in 5 years they're $10 a dozen, and that equates to that inflation rate, and I bought something for $5 now and it's 10 worth then, it's your dollar for dollar, right?
Yep.
That's the idea. That's the hope. It doesn't always happen.
No.
Usually they deteriorate, the vast majority. There might be a small section that holds value in some of those scenarios. You hope that the broad base of it holds value in real terms. And then the top echelon usually compounds at a higher, albeit very volatile growth rate, right? So lots of ups and downs, but over a longer, medium to long period, it might, show the growth profile of like equity, right? Of like public stocks or a private company or whatever, it might have a higher return profile, albeit with probably more risk than those things, right? So
Yep.
super volatile. Volatility is risk, right? So in what worries me about this space is that you have seen, and this is where all the people will pound their fists about how everything always goes up. you weren't here before. Like you didn't study this market. People like not you, but like
Hmm.
the universal you haven't seen what happens in markets like this. You just pulled forward what should have been even from peak to 70% down on most of the market, right?
Yeah.
You've pulled forward potentially decades of returns on most of these items. I mean, it's what we talked about when we started, right? Like WotC Commons, okay? A PSA 9 WotC first edition common. It was it was basically
It was
worthless. It was
three, four
barely
bucks.
worth the plastic it was in. It was
Yeah.
sub $5, right? You were losing money on shipping, right?
Yep.
Now it might be, God, I can like you can buy a PSA 10 Japanese jungle Pikachu for $100 today. That and they'll sell like that.
Yep.
You
They're gone.
couldn't have even you couldn't have
Giving it away.
couldn't have given it away.
They just
You
sent
couldn't
it back.
give it away. Does that return profile over that amount of time? Yes, there are paradigm shifts that happen and they
Yep.
totally change how things work. I do not see in something that is very emotional, fad based, has no underlying intrinsic value, not underlying intrinsic value, has no intrinsic value, has no underlying value, right? Is all
Hmm.
based off of speculative demand, nostalgia, emotion, all these things.
Yep.
To your point, you can't eat the cardboard.
Hmm.
Um, that's what worries me the most. So I think most things in this hobby are at an all-time high that they will conceivably ever be at in real terms during our lifetimes over the next 50 years. And there will be a small upper part of that will continue to grow, but
Right.
even that might be subdued by how much explosive growth we've seen. Like, yes, there's always been things in this hobby where we would look at it and be like, $5,000 in 2013. No
No.
way you would buy something and now it's $5 million,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, like
I,
again, same kind of pull forward. And the problem is when that top part starts to fall, you usually see the bottom part fall way harder. And we
yeah.
have seen, right, weakness in the
It's.
trophy market, massive weakness
Hmm.
in the rest of the hobby, right? I mean,
Yep.
anything that is, I mean, WotC set cards annihilated, right? And those are the things that really worry me the most about the whole space is, and that's why whether it's a graded card or a sealed product or a freaking pin or whatever, a plushie, who
Yeah.
cares? Um, it's about churn. It's about moving it for me
Yep.
because if I'm gonna try to make my like in no way do I want to be holding an holding an item in this hobby, thinking it's gonna go up by holding it for 18 months, right?
Yep.
Like all I want to do, and if that's your prerogative, like that's fine. Like go for it. See what and I could be totally wrong. And know
Yep.
what? Balding skies could go to $1,000. And know what? Whatever. Because we were all wrong about it about Evo, or not all of us, but a lot of us were wrong about it. And it's but some of that's timing, right? And it's luck and it happens. But if you bought it in on day one and you shut your eyes and didn't know what was happening and then woke up 10 years later, you have no idea what happened in there, right? And like
Yeah.
it could just be worth the same down the road, right? So a lot of that is timing and luck, obviously. But my no, like that's so what I'm trying to say is, and I'm sorry I'm rambling a bit,
Mm.
but that is a that is a you are introducing another variable, um another you're always introducing more variables and risk, but that's a very uncontrollable variable because I'm very much depending on what just occurs over time with demand, which is very hard to understand. um I know that I can churn, make arbitrage decision. No, assuming the whole market doesn't fall out, right? But that quick, rapid turnover, there's still risk there, but your time dilation risk is so much less, right? And yes, you're having to put more work in. There's more friction there. It's less passive. Um, but it's a known, right? It's a
Yep.
known that I can go to one platform, buy something, and like a lot of times, like it'll happen, right? You can buy something on PWCC for $50 and maybe it sells on eBay for 200.
Mhm.
And someone might say, well, I might say, well, then I go list it for 199. But like that introduces some more illiquidity into it, right? Because now you're competing with that market price.
Yep.
I can just go slash undercut the market at 150. And if it's a popular enough item, and
It's
that's
done.
about identifying it first when you make that play, right?
Yep.
Boom, done. That's a very small amount of time dilation. It's a lot less risk. And I know that the capital keeps moving and then I can use it for something. And but you could only like make that assess, like there's effort and thought and understanding of the market that goes in that, understanding what is popular right now, understanding what the volumes are. Like people don't study, I don't think, the volume of transactions on specific cards or specific booster boxes that they're trying to
Yep.
make plays on, and what they're transacting at. So that's why for me it's about, like, if I'm gonna do anything to make money in this, it is not like all this is zero. It's zero. It's in my collection. I
Yep.
assign zero value to it. It doesn't go on my balance sheet. I don't care. It's irrelevant. Okay. I bought it. I spent discretionary income on it. It's zero. I'm sorry if that sounds flippant to people because people are very sensitive about money, but I wouldn't have spent it on this if I had to bank on it being more valuable down the road.
Yep.
I would. It just not for me. So, and that's maybe too conservative, but I'll take my risk in places where,
Yeah.
I'm trying to build $1 billion business, shovel capital into that. I'm not going to.
Yeah. Well, I had to laugh because we're talking about the whole risk in the market, and this evolving skies is one of them that I laugh because I had someone actually comment on my video. I bet you feel stupid now because I did a video series where I had actually taken Evolving Skies. I bought it at $99 booster box, but shipping it came out to like $103 in
Mhm.
some sense. Cool. I bought it back in December of 2021. In March of 2022, I was selling that at $177 to $182 a booster box, and I
Mhm.
sold. So I still have 3 boxes left. They're completely paid for, which is the awesome part about that. But I was
Yeah.
showing, the breakdown of how much he actually made, and after fees and shipping and everything else like that, what I made per box. And a
We still
person goes,
probably made
well,
30%, right?
33, 34%. Yeah,
Yeah.
has made about 34% on profit margin for holding that for about 4 months, which is to me really good margin. Someone came on,
Yeah.
I bet you feel stupid now because they're selling for 280. I'm like, hindsight's 2020, my friend. I was making 34% in 4 months.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 boxes on my shelf, or 3 boxes on my shelf, that now they don't owe me a thing. That
Yes. You
money's
turn that
completely freed up.
you turn that 103 into 138. Then what'd you go do with that 138 that you freed up? Right? And it's
Yeah,
all
it just kept
compounding.
rolling. I
Time
mean,
value of money. It's a business. It's
mhm.
people don't, yes, like, and
It doesn't hurt my feelings. I sold it for 180. I don't,
no,
they act like I'm looking to regret that sale, and it's like, but it was guaranteed money. I liquidated guaranteed money at that point. There was
yeah,
no way at that point in time because there was reprints coming. That's why I was liquidating when I was. It's like you
yeah.
knew that a reprint was coming. This set was only 7 months old at that point in time, and you're like,
That's
Pokemon
why I
will,
sold the Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs, the pair.
yeah,
Disgusting. I mean, it was like a 4x.
yeah, I know. They were my LGS had them on he had them on the shelf for a couple months ago, maybe 3 months, 4 months ago, for $220 for the set. And I think the last time I went in there, nobody's bought them yet. They're still sitting there, but I think he has them listed for like 350 now. It's stupid, and that's right there. That's a 4x on those 2 boxes. So he's 4xing right now, and I think that's pretty close to what the market actually is on those right now.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
haven't
that's
really
what I
looked.
sold.
I think that it's pretty darn close though if you were to buy each box.
It was probably like 5 months ago when I sold them, and that was about it. Gross. I think it was a 4x gross.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's like, again, back to the money stays inside the hobby and doesn't come from outside the hobby. And to
Yeah.
your point about, last year how you're operating, like, that churn is vital. You're leveraging your own capital by decreasing time dilation. Like people just like think it's like this, they think it's like this simple end-to-end math problem,
Hmm.
and it's not. It's so multivariate.
It
It's
is.
all about how much. It's like it's calculus, like it is, because it's about rate of change and like all these like it's just like, yes, you can over, I always overcomplicate things a lot, but there is something to be said for actually understanding why making capital, the same capital plus some, work over and over again over 12 months
Yep.
is better, more return than making a certain amount of money statically do something over 12 months into an unknown, because you just have so much more optionality, plus you have compounding
Yeah. And
math.
am I going to stop holding sealed product? No. I mean, I'm still going to forever hold sealed product.
Done it with
It
Weiss all the time.
Well, that's my point. I'm not going to get rid of it, but the point is, I want it to become completely self sufficient. I want to be able to increase the amount of sealed product I have. And this year, my goal is to be able to maybe go to. My goal is to go to at least 2 Comic Cons this year, or the
Nice.
Collecticons.
Yeah.
Last year I didn't go to any just because of the situation. October doesn't really work for me because of farm stuff. That's the in
Yeah.
northern Wisconsin. That's the worst time to try and leave a
Yeah.
farm plus heating and business. It's not
Yeah.
a good time. But there's definitely some in the summertime here. I said my goal is to try, but I want to use what I'm doing here to fund my fun.
Heck
I
yeah.
don't want to be taking it out of the family unit to do those things. So that's where once again, you talk about, we talk about high risk, high reward, or high risk, medium reward. Yes, graded cards can be a little bit higher risk because you don't know what that grade's going to come, and what grader you're going to get that day could vary how much income you're going to make on those cards. But overall, you have a better chance of taking that money and turning it faster into more capital than sitting on 90% of the sealed product you're going to buy in 1 year, because
Yeah.
90% of sealed product with reprints and with everything that happens, the hype and FOMO, yes, it'll do good for a while and then it stagnates. You know, yes, right now booster boxes are going at a premium because there's a shortage of them. But when a reprint comes, all those prices will settle again and maybe stagnate again or go static. So once again, someone on my Discord, should I buy Chilling Reign today at $125 to $130 a box? Is it a good investment at this point? No, you kind of missed that train, because the reason it's going so high right now is that people are looking for product, and Chilling Reign happens to be available all over the place because of the amount that was printed. But if
And could it
there's
double from here? And
what
could we all be wrong?
could
Absolutely. But probably, if you think about it and you do the math on it and you do a risk assessment on it, the probability of it going back down to 80
is
is
more
much higher than
correct.
it going to 200 or whatever.
Hmm.
And then, of course, it just comes, people will ask that, but it's like, well, are either of those things life changing and detrimental to you, right?
Hmm.
Because then if you're just doing it on one and it's just like, I don't know,
Yeah,
because it's a piece of your whole puzzle, uh, then whatever,
yeah,
man. I mean, it's $130. I mean, if you're talking about doing it, you should have the money to do it. You just like
hmm,
it don't want that to sound flippant, but it just kind of is right now. If you're talking about, hey, should I buy, Chill and Rain at 130 and I want to buy 1,000 booster boxes? Well, that's different if
yeah,
in the context of your overall financial picture or your Pokemon business or whatever, both intertwined. It's all about
yeah,
what percentage of that of your total allocation it is, what percentage of your business that is, how much of your liquidity you're locking up, what you need margin wise to make your business work, what you're expecting to get as a return on that. Like it all matters. I think these people will spend like 4 hours thinking about how they can make $30 or lose $50. And I'm like, bro, you could like shit, you should have gone and played online poker for $4 for that
Yeah.
$130. You probably had a better probability of making money in a day than you do hoping Chilling Rain goes up $50 in the next 6 months. I mean, what are we
Yeah.
doing here?
Well,
Like,
that's what I.
what are we doing here? Really?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's one of the big things I tell people is you want to buy Chilling Reign at 130. Well, what's your overall goal?
yeah,
If your just goal is to make money, you know, how fast you want to make it. What are you trying to make with it? What's your expectation? Are you looking 10 years down the road, or are you looking 2 weeks down the road? I mean, all these are big variables. Do I think that Chilling Reign is a good investment for 2 weeks down the road? No. I think that we're going to get hit with booster box reprints in the next 3 weeks, and that thing is not going to move again. Or, like you said, there'll be a Chilling Reign reprint, which would be the ultimate oops.
dagger.
And
Yeah.
then it'll, like you said, then the potentiality of it dropping back down to $80 is a heck of a lot higher than it going up to 180.
And neither of this scenario, sealed, graded cards, where
Yeah,
they're all just different kinds of risk.
yeah,
I think there's ways that you like know what it comes down to. It comes down to exactly what I said at the beginning, right? I started my own business because I wanted to bet on myself,
yep,
right? Making, and this is not to belittle anyone that does like sealed investing or whatever, but like I think there's more skill in the other side of it that reduces the excess variables in the equation, right? Or better said, I prefer to play in the graded card space from a trying to make money standpoint, unless it's breaking Japanese product because I know that's easy. I do it in a certain time frame. I churn it. It's done. I prefer to do the grading because I feel like to what you were saying earlier, tonight,
yep,
you're using some of your skill set, right? Like it's yes, there's certainly skill, right, in assessing um, the price point you can achieve getting into a modern sealed product and creating a strategy around how to exit that.
yep,
But there's the huge underlying or overhang variable of the supply side that you can't control. Yes, that's introduced in graded cards too, but that's why a lot of times for me personally, I mitigate that by either very rapidly getting to market with a new set or not and focusing on other stuff, mid era to vintage, right?
yep,
But it's the risk is still there. Like to be fair to people who are really focused on that way of making money in the hobby, like it it's totally fair. I mean, look, I like line by line, I will write it out for you guys. I will buy a Japanese booster box. I will buy half a dozen of them for under $50. I will break them on YouTube for a net of 82 a box, maybe, right? Maybe 78, somewhere in there. Um, that allows me to maybe buy a box for myself and have the cost basis be zero. It gives me free content. It has multiple perks to it. Now, the money, the return is good in percentage terms. In dollar terms, it really doesn't move the needle. I would have to buy, I don't know, at $50 to make $30 a box. I would have to buy, I don't know. I
100.
would have to buy more than I could break.
Yeah,
More than I could break into the market to do that, right? So it doesn't work like that, right? I mean, hundreds,
yeah,
hundreds, for it to just even make sense because of what else I can do with that capital. Um, and so like that's not I just distracted myself with trying to figure out the number, but it's kind of hilarious when you think about it. The market the ability to sell through becomes the limiting factor, and then I'm
yep,
like, what could I have done with that time and that capital? So, but to be fair, I do it. Like guys, I do it. If you're watching this, I do it. I make plays in modern sealed. I don't always sell it sealed on the back end, but sometimes I do.
yeah,
Because honestly, right, like if I do that and I buy, it all comes out in like wash kind of, but I can basically debasis a booster box or a handful of booster boxes and then sell them in 6 to 12 months or break them in 6 to 12 months. And, unless we totally get destroyed, like
Yeah.
it's not at zero. So I did okay. I probably lost money because if I just sold it off the rip, it probably would be worth more than waiting. Because usually waiting, you lose like you do with seal. Like you just people lose attention. I mean, we saw it with the jab. It was the same time really that a lot of the English modern uh, market got destroyed. I mean, I could go buy stuff on Amazon for, VMAX Climax for $40 or whatever,
Hmm.
like on freaking US Amazon, not even going to, I
Yeah,
mean, it
not
was a
even going
joke,
there.
right? Yeah. And they tripled in price, right? And it's the same reason people bought, Chill and Rain at whatever it was. I mean, you could probably get it in the high 60s, low 70s. I forget what did it fall to, maybe 80, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I bought into Chilling Rain. I got the 4 booster boxes I did at $78 a box.
yeah,
So,
78, right? So
yep.
something like that, right? So all that to be said, yeah, it's there. I just I can just make more money, have more fun, use my brain a little more doing it elsewhere. So that's just what I'm gonna do. It's
Yep. And that's
you know,
where I'm at
care.
because I
Yeah.
always, I always laugh to someone, even my wife says, how you know? Well, I was a machinist for 8 years. So things being off center, little defects, lines like that stand out to me like a sore thumb. And I said, part of me, I said, I know that's going to hold me back on the grading side because everything I see has a defect in it. And that's the worst part is it's like, sending this card out. Well, that's like this one. So I'll grab it here. This card was the first one to come back from AGS with a
Oh
10.
yeah.
So now there's two of them out there with a population of two. So someone else finally did it, and I did this one like 5 months ago. And it was the same thing. I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm like, I can't find a single defect on this card. And it's like, this is probably the first Pokemon card that I've actually can say in hand that I could not find a defect on it. And the camera that they had couldn't find a defect on this card.
Yeah.
But everything else, I see defects on it. And
Mhm.
set that back. But that's just it. I mean, that's just my brain when it comes down to it. And I said, that's going to make it really difficult for some of these because they don't need to be, for PSA to get a PSA 10, they don't need to be 100% perfect to make it.
It's actually
Centering,
hard for me. It's hard for me to pre-grade English modern at this point because
yeah,
I'm too harsh on it.
yep. That's where I said, I'm going to be way too harsh on it. Actually, one of them, and it's not going to be a huge play, but at $15 grading now, it's playable, is, like I said, like a ZAM card from Vivid Voltage. As silly as it sounds, I got this card for $2,
Yep.
perfectly centered, perfect, everything's great on it, and it can be a play for 40. So
Yeah.
I got $15 for the grading, $2, 17 plus the shipping. You're looking at 19. I'm gonna
Right.
darn near with even the sales and everything on it. I'm still gonna go about a 30. You're gonna be 50% for gross.
50%.
I'm making 50% minus grading fees. I'm gonna be doing a 30% gain. And once again, though, it's a 60-day turnaround.
And then you're deducting, those grading fees against your taxes on the other side. So
Correct. Because now it's a
you're
fee on that end. That's the other part that people don't realize when it comes down to the tax part of it. That if you
um,
are running this as a business and you're deducting some of these service charges off of your taxes, that also is a benefit also. So there's a few ways that you can play it to actually increase that margin just a little bit more. So at
yep.
$20 grading, it doesn't work. Your margins get so much smaller. It would still, you'd make a profit margin, but to me, if you're making less than 20% on it,
This isn't worth it.
it's not really worth the time at that point. But
The
15, that
time.
$5 bonus is enough to push it up to where, hey, why not make the play now? It's been sitting here
Yeah.
for 6 months waiting. I've been hoping for 15. I honestly been waiting for 12. I'm not convinced we won't see 12 by the end of the year. But
Yeah.
that's the other. That's another play you could sit there and do with the grading is go. I could wait forever and see if it goes down to 12 or 10. But yeah,
And
what
then
point? How long do you sit?
imagine someone doing that at scale, right? Imagine someone who's got 1,000 of those,
Oh,
right?
I know.
And now that $5 difference on grading, Oh my goodness. I mean that's when your low dollar value cards on a margin percentage basis, that incremental drop in grading fee really matters. Now,
It
as a
does.
collector doing one or whatever,
Don't matter.
matters a little less, but it's also part of the big scheme of things, right? If you're sending that in the context of a whole PSA submission, you're looking at the aggregate, all those pieces together
Yep.
matter to what your real, net is on the whole thing. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
I've
I'm struggling with what I'm gonna do because I really hate grading with PSA. I'm sorry, I just
I
really do.
I don't. I honestly like AGS. I've been using AGS. I don't like that they use the PSA slab. It just says AGS on the bottom, but it is what it is. I think the one reason that I have, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. The one thing that I do
I like
like
those
about
guys. I
AGS
met them.
is that it is completely computer graded. That
Yeah,
means that the cup of coffee the guy got at Starbucks didn't piss him off and he graded things harsher that day. The computer
yeah,
don't care.
yeah.
People went after AGS because they didn't catch the first edition stamp. PSA and CGC didn't catch that being a fake first edition, but you're expecting a robot to catch that. I, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. I mean, there's a certain criteria that it's going to meet. If it's in that criteria, so they've got a mark, and if the center hits in that spot for a first
Yeah.
edition, they're going to give it to it. It's
You can only
not
train the
grading the
model
mark.
so effectively. Yeah. It's how AI works. I mean, you can only
Yeah,
train it so effectively. I mean, over time, it will get better.
it will. I mean, it's going to continue to get better. But that was the only
Enhance.
reason that I've been kind of drawn to AGS. Is it isn't because anything else in the fact that it's unbiased versus a human grader that you know we've seen it. We've seen it on how many content creators, and one of them that always drives me crazy is I've watched Leonhardt break slabs and send them right back to BGS.
Yeah,
How does the centering grade change?
I know.
The centering grade is the most measurable, unchanging part of a card. You could crumple a card to pieces. As long as you can see the lines, the centering is the same. The centering does not change. But they'll have a whole grade, it'll go from a 10 to a 9. That is a huge, huge variance just because a different person looked at the card.
Different person closed their left eye instead of their right eye, and all of a sudden it's all flipped
It's
to the
off the other
right.
direction. I mean, how did you do
It,
that?
I mean, look, if we're being honest, I mean, yeah, the whole thing is like
Oh,
kind of a farce. I
it
mean,
is
right? Like it's so ridiculous the amount of value we assign
to a
to
number.
putting something in plastic and someone looking at it where I'm like they're spending a infinitesimal fraction of time versus what we spend to look at our cards before we send them, right?
Hmm.
Um, and all of a sudden we assign a massive amount of value to like some dude over there under a lamp looking at our card for 2.5 seconds. Like
Yeah,
if
three
on a generous
seconds.
day, it's interesting, right? It's a little scary when you think about it, right? And that's the whole PSA 6 to 10 thing, right? Where it's like, how many times you just keep cracking a 6 with a dent until someone misses it and you get a 10.
Exactly. And look at the Pikachu
That's crazy.
Illustrator. It's a perfect example. That card got cracked 4 times and sent back to PSA until it got a 10. And then it got a 10 when they said they had a potential buyer for Logan Paul. So you don't think that was got the 10 because PSA was looking at the sales, the advertisement potential of that 10? I
People are very naive
I
and they
know.
don't.
The second I heard that, it's like, so the PSA, no, oh yeah, no, they knew that if they could get a 10, that this thing would sell a Logan Paul, and all of a sudden it comes back with a 10. It's like, uh huh, right.
Mhm.
That's a legitimate 10. Got
Yeah.
9 3 times, and
And even if that specific example is conjecture, it doesn't matter because that you have all these variables are introduced because it's all humans.
yeah,
It's all it's look, these companies, first of all, they're the smartest ones in the whole game because the
Yep.
people making the most money are the people who don't have to have the skin in the game by actually owning the shiny
Yep.
cardboard and take a cut of every transaction or every grading
Yep.
every grading fee or what it's all transactional based, right? It's in and out, or pass through, right? Knots of the world, the eBays of the world, the PSAs of the world, they're all the ones winning through all this, right?
No, they are.
Really.
Well, you think about it.
When
TCG Player
they're
makes
business,
13% on every card that sells through that company,
oh my
and they don't
God, it's
even touch
crazy.
the card. eBay makes 13% on everything that sells through eBay, and they don't, unless they're doing the verification on it. But prior to last year, they never even touched any of it. They
No,
just collect 13% right off top. Any of these grading, any of these selling sites are the winning places. The grading companies are really making money because they don't have any skin in the game. eBay, TCG Player, Toad and Troll, and none of them have skin in the game. It's just a pass through.
and I'm happy to pay them because it
Yeah,
gives me access to millions of people I
millions.
never could.
You're
Yeah.
paying a
So
convenience fee, is what you're doing
yeah,
for that 13% on your sales. Is you're paying a convenience fee to get viewed by potentially tens of millions of people looking for something.
87% of 100 is way better than 100% of zero
Yep, exactly.
all day long. So yeah, I got no qualms with that.
No,
For
no, I don't have problems with it. I'm just saying. But if you think about who's making money on the deal,
oh
they're
yeah,
making 13% for doing absolutely nothing but having a good website and a server
the
system.
same thing in the digital asset space, right? It's
Yep,
the Coinbases of the world. It's all same with the brokerage houses. Whoever's making money on float, who's ever making money on transaction,
yep,
those are the people who just win over and over. Because it doesn't matter if it goes up or down. It just
nope,
matters that it transacts.
yep.
So, and that might seem simple, but sometimes people don't think about that. So,
No. All right, moving on. This is a new question for the set. Of course, you're going to be the first guinea pig for this one. And this was
sweet.
brought up by, my wife kind of pointed it out, and I thought it was a good addition is that we talk about all the good things and everything that goes right for you in the hobby. But we all know that a lot of times in any kind of these hobbies or in life in general, there's always things that happen, and there's a dark side to things too. And this was a good question of not exactly going complete dark side, but having some of that point of view where stresses, things can actually cause those kind of issues. So the question that we added into this one now is going to be on all the new questions is going to be, what was your make or break moment in the hobby, and how did you work your way through it?
Mm, yeah, that's yeah, I've been thinking about this question since you sent this over. I knew it would be kind of the hardest one to answer. We'll frame it over the last couple years because that's kind of when I've been most involved from a business side, from a outward hobby side. I've had a lot of challenges over the last 3 years. Um, you know, Before I had the YouTube and the Instagram, I was very public with it. Like I mentioned, I lost my father unexpectedly, which was very challenging. It in a lot of ways it drew me closer to the hobby though because it's something I shared with him, and it was back to what we talked about before, very much a place of comfort in a lot of ways and enjoyment, and kind of an escape. I think another part of it that like where I had like an area of trepidation was like I'd only ever, so again, the whole reason I started this whole thing, this Instagram, which had started the Market Mondays on Instagram video, and then I went to YouTube after that. The whole reason I started it was, and actually, this ties in well to what I just talked about. So 2017, 18 until pretty much the pandemic, I used to write a blog for millennials, right? I used to educate them on, my peers on basic financial literacy. I really lost I'm a pretty good writer. Like I used to write our newsletters for our business and do a lot of editing, and I really enjoy writing. And like got to write a couple articles for my buddy's magazine that's coming out, like stuff like that. But when the pandemic hit, I really lost like kind of my vigor for writing. I don't know, I just didn't have it in me. And when my dad passed, I like really didn't have it in me because I had so much other stuff that I was focused on doing. And so the whole reason I started the channel was that I wanted a new medium to teach financial literacy, to get the ideas out of my head, right? To kind of enjoy that creative yet financial side, and hopefully help a couple people, right? And so really a big part of it was like, do I want to like, am I going to get out of my own head and take the dive into being much more public with everything, right? Like, I mean, people don't know a lot like about me per se. They don't know me, right? But my face is out here now. I am on the internet in a very exposed way. And it was like, am I going to kind of come out of the closet on the collecting here and really, you know, make that plunge? Cause like you talked about, with when you left Pokemon, like I don't do anything halfway,
No.
right? Like I am just full bore. And I knew that I would have to really commit to it. And at the time, I was still working in my former business, and then we were working from home. So I had a lot of like kind of optionality around that. And so I dove right in. And then kind of the part two of that is, this past year we've been fundraising for my business, and it's been challenging. The venture capital fundraising front has changed because of the economic situation, market situation. So a lot of stress, had to, definitely take a step back. But I thought about shutting the whole thing down from a content creation standpoint, right? It was just like, I ended up taking a break here and there, but I thought about just being done with it, just being, interacting with people when I could. And what is keeping me here is, and actually a lot of what I do, right? Like, for example, like today is the first time I've like posted graded cards for sale on my Instagram in like, I don't know, like 9 weeks or something, right? Like, I was like, okay, what spigot can I turn off? Well, I don't need to do the business side of this, but the relationships are important to me. The community is super important to me. So let me maintain it by a shoestring, throw a hey guys out there every once in a while. But like that's how I work through it, is really like thinking about, it sounds hokey, but it's true. Like I wanted to still be part of the community, and I didn't want to just like shut it down, even though my time might be better spent elsewhere. And it's been really hard, and I've just kind of worked through it, and I'm still working through it honestly right now. Like it's gotten better, and we closed on a bunch of funding, which is super exciting for my business, and it gives my employees a lot of security, because that's what I really care about, right? I got people who's need their families, right? So a lot of exciting things. I don't really talk what that business is because it's very sensitive around the government and stuff like that. So I just don't really talk about it, but it's cool. It's super exciting. It's fun for me. It's challenging. It's crazy. But that was really it. It's like, do I want to keep doing this? Right. And so I'm almost like still working through it now. And honestly, that's a reason like I said yes to come do this. Cause I'm like, I gotta be able to do it. Like if I'm gonna do it, I gotta be able to be there, and I gotta be able to come back to it. And and I get a ton of joy out of this, right? Like selfishly, like it is so much fun. Like it is
It's an
like
endorphin rush.
yeah, man, it's like my favorite thing to do is talk about this hobby, and like
Yeah.
just like and I don't have an agenda. Like I just like hope to like connect with people, and like uh, man, like sometimes I think I should just totally stop the selling side of it, because I want to stay genuine to that core. And that's another thing. It's like, how do I, but again, it goes back to that. I need to do it so I can feel rational about buying shiny
Yeah.
cardboard for myself, because I'm not going to do it otherwise. So,
Like I tell my
um,
wife, you got to break even, or this in the hobby, or it's just not gonna. You're gonna
yeah,
stop, and you're not gonna get anything new. But I said, if you want to have fun and you want to continue growing it, you have to. I try to at least break even on it at the end of the year. Whatever I put
yeah,
in, and if my collection grows, my collection grows. That's fantastic. That's exactly what I want.
mm,
Collection to get bigger, side stuff get bigger. Overall, I'm not taking anything home. I mean, nothing's leaving the room or my storage. It's just all fun.
Yeah, it's just fun, man. Like that's what I just why I'm here. Like because honestly, it's just a like if it was about the value I assigned to it from a monetary standpoint, I wouldn't be like it wouldn't last a second here. I mean, this is my time is very valuable to me. And this is how I have fun, right? It just is. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. Um,
Well, there, you made her through it.
lot of weird stuff has happened in the last couple of years, but we're doing it. So
We're still trudging
thanks.
through it, right?
Yeah, man. Day by day, day by day. So
So, um, this is the other one that can get a little tricky, like we talked about. Trying to really determine this, but it's a good reference for people that are coming in a hobby. Know how long you've been into it. Just relative. Doesn't have to be exact numbers. I don't ask anybody to put exact like dollar numbers because sometimes it's business wise you don't want to be putting that kind of tightness. But if you got a relative number or anything like that, is estimated hours worked to income per month on TCGs since you started. And you can say
so
modern since you started,
yeah,
you could say in the last year even, or
yeah. So 2022, um, probably it's $100 to $125 an hour.
eh,
So without saying how much that is or how much
no.
um, but yeah, it's somewhere around there. Now could bleed out a little less if you count some more of like kind of the fun hybrid hours. So
Hmm.
maybe more towards that conservative end of 100.
Yeah,
But that's gross, right? That's not net.
that's
That's gross.
yeah,
Net is very different. Margins are good, but they're not like insane.
yeah.
Um, so, but it was, 2022 was a really good year. And luckily I kept super good records and, I know how to do the whole tax game and I mean, I'm like dumb. I know and people stress about it a lot, but because I'm so OCD, I got every spreadsheet ticking tied to every,
Yeah.
I mean, it's done. I mean, my taxes are done basically. I'm just
Mhm.
waiting on, traditional, 1099s and stuff. So,
That's honestly all I'm waiting for. We were laughing at the last live. Dan and I were talking about taxes, and it's like, yeah, he had started his, and I'm like, yeah, I sent all my stuff to the accountant. But once again, I had all the spreadsheets. I was just going through and making sure that I had all the shipping. All the other little expenses that you sometimes forget about were tied up in the side of it. But like you said, I just hit the send button, and I was waiting. I'm waiting for some 1099s to come through, and
yeah.
it's not as scary as
And
you think as long as you keep good
oh,
records of what you're doing, especially when you're doing this kind of stuff.
yeah.
And you're calling it a business. If you keep meticulous records of what I buy, what I sell, taxes paid, the shipping paid, and all that other stuff, it ends up working out really well. The accountant's really good at finding it all.
And for most people, like it's pretty simple, right? Like you're going to get a 1099K from eBay. It's going to have a gross amount that you sold on. Then you're going to download a report from eBay. It's going to give you all the transaction fees. Those are going to go on your Schedule C, unless you sold one card for, or no, you won't because it's still 200 transactions this year.
200
So,
transactions, yeah.
um, but at any rate, it's pretty like I mean, there's like
Plug and
10-minute
play.
YouTube videos that tell you how to fill out a Schedule C, and you don't even have to do it if you have a good CPA. You just give them
Yep.
the info. And honestly, the likelihood of like this is just like if you're a sole prop and you're just filing it with your taxes, right? Because people get all worried about like the cost basis stuff. And honestly, like it's crazy, right? I did 250 transactions on eBay last year, right? I had cost basis on like three of those items, right?
Yeah.
Because of how people don't understand like how the whole game works, right? Like if I got a dollar card and I put grading into it, like that's like I'm just gonna deduct the grading. Like there is
Yep.
no basis there, right? So
No.
and I know you know this, but it's like
Hmm. Yeah.
people get really scared and worried about that. And it's like, look, man, I got like 4 receipts for something I sold on eBay that I bought on PWCC, and there's my basis, and that just helps me reduce my tax burden a little bit. And then you keep track of everything. You keep track of it all, and you just talk to a CPA
Yeah.
and see how aggressive they want to be and figure it out. And you pay $600 to save yourself thousands at
Oh,
the end.
exactly. I mean, I my CPA cost me $426 to do my taxes because it's
Yeah.
farm, it's this, it's the household is all kind of wrapped up in the family business. Dad still does it through his end on that CPA part, but I said it's not that expensive, and like you said, it's that peace of mind. Number one, if they do come back and want to audit, she's got everything in a file in a folder, and she just whips it
Yeah.
out if it ever did come to that. I mean, with the farm, it's really hard for them to
Totally
audit me.
figured.
That's what I always laugh is agriculture's great for that. And they don't really.
Yeah.
You're losing money all the time, anyways. I mean, just putting it out in the field to go eat grass,
Yeah.
um, but I mean that's just it. As long as you got a good CPA, and it's well worth the $400 to $500 to get one.
Yeah. Like
If you
guys,
want,
and I say guys because like it's weird because this is the first time I haven't done a live one in a while, but I know hopefully some people will watch. Like I am a CFO of a C corp, and I use an accountant for my personal taxes because
yep,
it makes my life easy, and you should
you
too.
should do it. I would never suggest anybody. I get TurboTax, and I used to do my own on
Yeah,
TurboTax, and
yeah.
when I was getting a W-2, and it was just strictly two W-2s, anybody just scan it. That was when they had the scan and go, and it first came out. And you just scan your W-2, hit enter, and they'd send you a check in the mail. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
disputing that, but when you start getting into a business aspect where you've got income, throughput, input, you're gonna get 1099 Ks. You're gonna get all these different things. My wife gets two. She sells Pampered Chef and some other things just at home as an at-home business. So she gets the 1099s. I literally just take all that stuff. I put it in a folder. I go to the accountant, the CPA. I go, here you go. Oh, and here's my
Yeah.
check for $500. You know, I don't have to do
Yeah.
nothing but come back in a week or two and sign the paper, and then she hits the file for me. I mean that's really
No.
it.
And
So
it's just, you got to review it. You got
yep,
to know what you're looking at a little bit. So educate yourself, right?
yep,
I switched CPAs this year because not, it was more me. Like I just needed a separation from kind of my old CPA and that just kind of part of my life. But, they made mistakes before. So a lot of mistakes got made around digital assets, around Bitcoin and
hmm,
Ethereum and transactions and things that weren't taxable events that get coded. And you gotta look. You gotta
yep,
know what they're filling out. So educate yourself for sure.
yep.
But yeah, think about how much time you leverage by just paying someone $500. Like
five hundred
it's
dollars amount of money I can make doing something else for that. For me, it'd
yeah,
take me. I would just
anxiety
guess at
is
least
gone.
2 days of probably messing around trying to be sure, and then I would sit there and send it, and then the sleepless nights I would have for
Yep.
the next 5 years, hoping that I didn't screw something up. I
Yep.
think
All of a sudden
it's
you wake
actually
up in
7 years,
3
isn't it?
a.m. and you're like, I put the decimal in the wrong place. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
I did that. I did that one time, and luckily it wasn't a big deal. But I mistyped the last two digits of a number, so I had gotten um, when I was 14 or in 2014, I got a what are they inheritance,
Uh-huh.
and so when I was typing it in, it was only like $8,000, some weird percentage number based on what the income was. But I put
Yeah.
8,436, and it was actually 8,463. That mistake cost me 286 freaking dollars because they charged me all that interest on freaking 30 some bucks
Yep.
through the whole
Yep.
time. And then they came back to me like the last year they could and sent me this thing that they had the 1099 the whole time. They knew the mistake, and then the last year that they possibly could. So that was last year. It's 7 years, I believe, is what the
Yeah.
statute of limitation is for them. So at year
Mm.
7, they send me a bill that says, you screwed up on your taxes. You owe us $283 for your $32 mistake you made in 2014. With
That happened to my mom with a property or with a piece of land where my dad had like half done this like EPA, like the Environmental Protection
oh
Agency, like thing with I forget what it used to, anyway, whatever, it doesn't
yeah,
matter, but and it was bad. Like it was really like it was like
thousands.
but oh yeah, and it's like really like come on, like
Yeah.
and it was like it was like yeah, it was a 6 or almost 7 year,
Mm-hmm.
basically a
They wait.
tax lien with an interest rate
They do it
compounding on
intentionally 100%. They wait
100%.
the 7 years because they get all the interest.
Get
And
all
there's
the
nothing you
interest.
can do to fight it.
And the best part is when you have to if you have to file an amended return, right? So let's say they ended up owing me more money,
Yeah.
right? So they sent me money, but then they owed me another delta, right? Interest accrues on that payable to you. But
Yep.
then they're going to send you a tax form to pay taxes on that interest.
Yep.
I'm like, what are we
What?
doing here?
Well, that was like, and then the best part was is that because I owed the IRS, my state refund, not just the portion I owed, got sent to the IRS.
Oh
So they
no.
took my state, which is like 3,000 some dollars, and sent it to the IRS to pay the tax due of 280 some dollars. And I had to wait a year and a half to get the
Get
remainder
that
of that
money. Yeah.
$3,000 back. You think they paid me interest for holding my money for the year?
Not in that situation.
Not in that
No,
situation.
not
I didn't
that
make
one.
crap and I was out almost 3 grand.
Oh,
It's like you're kidding. And you
it's
call them up
crazy.
and they send you through the rigmarole of, oh, you got to talk to this. But I just said it's either going to show up again or it's not. I got to the
Yeah.
point after about 100 hours of being on the phone with the IRS trying to figure out where my money is from the state that I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
That yeah,
And that's a
off.
peace of mind. Trust me, guys. I had
Do it.
$3,000 stuck. I just literally got it. What? About 3, 4 months ago. I just got it back, and that was my 2001 tax return. So I got $3,000 extra, which is now going to be probably claimed on my. I'm going to get a form because that's income, I'm sure,
100%. Yeah,
because it
you're gonna
came
go
from the
like, oh, get
government,
it.
not from my tax refund.
Yep.
You know,
Oh my God, it's just such a joke. And then
just pay
like
the
when they
five
were
hundred
doing,
dollars. At the end of the day, moral of the story is, don't mess with them. Just pay the $400 or $500 and just
do it.
have them type it in and just double check it.
And speaking of which, that's why I'm super glad that they pushed out the 1099K change rules
Yeah,
just
I know.
to, hopefully people can educate themselves a little more. But
Yep.
what a total like the biggest like just joke ever, right? Okay, so everyone got stimmy checks, but in that first stimulus check package, what did they do? They wrote in this 1099K change. So
Yep.
what are they doing? They're effectively going after the uneducated in the middle to lower class who aren't going to be able to understand what this file means that they get this
Yep.
1099K. So they'll misfile their taxes, and what will happen is instead of them having filed appropriately and owing $12 in tax, they will get a letter from the IRS saying, cut us a $300 check and it all goes away.
Yep. We're done.
And that's where they're going to make all that money. It is not on the actual taxation. It's just on preying on
Oops.
like the uneducated, which sounds a little like, I don't want to sound like
Tinfoil
super
hat.
one way or the other, but that's like, you know, it's certainly a little bit predatory there. So it's not something that sits right
No.
with me. I think you should always pay your taxes, but I think that's pretty wrong. Grandma sells her fridge on Facebook Marketplace for $600, and you're gonna freaking
Yep.
destroy her life. Are you kidding
Exactly.
me?
You're gonna send
Stupid.
her with her already undercut Social Security check, and you're gonna hit her with the $300 penalty for that month that she can't afford.
Crazy, bro.
So
It's just
yeah,
what a
it's a joke.
it's a
But
big joke.
um, what is one mistake you made that you could advise others to avoid if they go down this path?
Yeah, I got lazy with where I was sending cards. So I just started sending everything to CGC, and I started doing it all with subgrades. And I knew better. I knew that I should be sending my higher end Weiss to Beckett, and that I should be bifurcating submissions to have subgrades and not have subgrades. And I should probably be sending stuff to PSA other than just packs and blah, blah, blah. And I got a little lazy. So if you're a business trying to do this, and the money absolute, like it really, really matters, right? This is
Yep.
how you're really generating the majority of your income or a significant amount of income. You got to be, it's not just about that skill around pre-grading and about understanding what's going to come out on the other side as far as demand and market price point and understanding how long it's all going to take and how the market could move against you. But it's about understanding which grading company to use with which cards and how much, what levers you have to pull as far as like subgrades, no subgrades. If you're doing signatures, whether, you get both things graded or just, authentic and odd, like all those little variables around it. There's a lot of skill there too. And, like Weiss is a really good example, right? Where, I'll give you an example. So like should in above, right? So an SP or an SSP should really go to Beckett. Um,
Yeah.
Now, if you're really just want to sell it, the thing with Weiss is like this 9.5 will be probably be a 10 at PSA.
Yep.
People send Weiss to PSA because it's going to get a 9.5 at Beckett. So they send it to PSA, it gets a 10, and the market is dumb right now because they haven't been in Weiss since 2015. They've been in it since 2022. And they don't understand that all of this is really super high quality on the English side, right? So
Yep.
basically, a 10 and above, this is basically a raw card. It's a 9.5. It's basically the equivalent value of a raw card, maybe a little more, but that's kind of how Weiss works. It's understanding things like that where I got a little lazy and I was like, CGC's sending, Graydon Weiss now, and I really like CGC. So I'm going to send my personal cards there and I'm going to send the stuff I want to
Yeah.
sell there. And both liquidity and price point were diminished because of that decision. So just stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to kill me. It's not going to,
And
make me
you,
not be able to sleep at night. But if I was running a full-fledged business around this and every percent of margin mattered, I'd be a lot more thoughtful and strategic about where I sent what.
yeah.
So,
Well, and that's a good point to look at, and that's even me with doing this grading, and I'm trying to be as efficient as I can. That's the biggest trick is especially starting into it and not having quantity at this point. It's more I'm going for quality. So once again, got to be efficient. Got to know this one's going to get me more money at a Beckett. I know it can get it even a 9.5. This one's going to get a 10 at PSA, so I'm going to send it there so I can get my efficiency out of that 10. Okay, this one is going to do really good at CGC because it's really low pop, and there's not very many of them that come out of CGC with that 9.5 to 10. So it's worth the risk of maybe the efficiency of getting that. So those are kind of the
does it have a
fun.
dent in it? So it's going to get a PSA 6, but it's going to get a CGC 8.5, maybe.
Exactly. It's got a bad corner or a ding or something. Yeah, those are all factors that you got to lay out, and I'm getting little
That's why
piles for all.
I used to use middlemen because
Yep.
then I could go to all three grading companies or all two or both grading companies
Yep.
at certain times with no minimum, I could just send one card or three cards,
Yep.
so definitely take advantage of that. If those watching, it's that's a way to access all your entry points, right? So and then obviously, with like what you're doing with AGS, right? It's like just understanding that additional market risk around any fourth grading company, right?
Correct.
There's always something there,
And I've
people
been
have
doing more
their,
of my personal grading at AGS, just
yeah,
because if it comes back a 10, a 9, or whatever, it really doesn't hurt my feeling. Like that charge there is
yeah.
a perfect example. I know that that's a PSA 10, but I know
Mm,
it's not leaving the house because my son pulled that. So it's not leaving unless he sells it. So
yeah.
that's one of the cards that I could send to AGS if it doesn't get a 10. I know the market's not as hot on it, but I know that the computer grading and the thought process is that if AGS does catch on, let's say more people go to that AI, and AGS is on the cutting edge of that factor, they would now potentially become the graded AI company to lead that charge. My feelings
Yeah.
is what's maybe eventually going to happen is PSA or CGC will eventually try to buy out AGS and take over the robo grading. That
Yep. And obviously PSA already made a play there, but I don't know how that's working out on their back end. And that's got to be, from the little I talk to those guys, that's got to be the strategy in a lot of ways.
I
Like it's the same idea, right? Is like, let's say you wanted to build a new trading card platform, right? A new marketplace, right? That had this really cool feature, right?
yep,
Why wouldn't you just try to build that feature out and sell it to one of the companies instead of trying to build that
the
whole
whole platform.
consumer base, right? And obviously, there's a lot of things that go into that with optics and fundraising in what you
Yep,
think your potential of your dream could be. But like, it's like, dang, man, take the best elements of your business and just freaking
yeah,
shut down the pressing, the hydraulic pressing machines and sell the damn tech to one of the big players. Like
yep,
maybe BGS will come into the 21st century eventually and want to buy a company like that. But
correct.
I
That
love BGS, I do, but they're hilarious
oh
sometimes.
they oh my goodness, their stuff right now. They're gonna have freaking a mob outside of their building if they don't start answering emails.
The VHS people get back to me pretty fast.
Who does the
the
BGS do?
VHS, the VHS grading
Oh,
people.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they're not doing much probably. So,
No, but no,
oh,
that's
it's crazy.
but
Yeah,
that's
it's
just it.
hilarious.
I mean, it all comes down to the assessment at the end of the day, in my opinion. And like I said, it's I'd see AGS potentially being purchased by one of the big three. I
Yeah,
think if they get to a point
absolutely.
where they get the camera optics all right, they're able to catch even the air. I mean, if they could get a program in AI, like you said, that learning part, where they can catch that first edition stamp being wrong. If they could catch the things that are, like you said, someone spending 3 seconds on a card is never going to catch, or very seldom. It has to be blatantly obvious for them to catch it. But you got to remember too. This is what I laugh about first edition stamps. How many variations are there on first edition stamps? There's double
Every
stamp. There's gray
probably.
stamp. There's dark stamp. There's thick stamp. There's thin stamp. There's you know you're expecting these guys, these people, to visually look at this and catch that mistake with it being potentially off by a fraction of an inch when they've
Yeah,
got
what
to
are they
deal
gonna
with all the
do?
other stuff.
Scratch it with their
Well,
fingernail
yeah,
and
we
see
want to
if
do
it
take a
comes
razor
off?
blade to it and
Like,
see if it scratches off. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean,
oh,
all of them. It's very difficult to catch that error, especially when you're talking about there's already built-in errors that people are accepting of it without it being fraudulent.
yeah.
So I mean, you think about all the different first edition stamps there are, even in the grading field. You can get a gray stamp. You can get a, all those different things.
That's why I don't collect tens.
I, no, you don't. Yeah, don't collect tens.
Zero interest.
Yeah,
I think just that whole if it's if there's so much, if there's so many arbitrary variables introduced to it,
yeah,
the price, especially, well, now especially, but just in general, it never really made sense. Like the price premium and the perceived value of a 10 versus a 9. I think that delta is wild. And I don't think it means the nines become more valuable. I just think it means the tens become less valuable
yeah,
over time. Or the rate of downward change is more rapid on the tens than it is on the nines. So then the gap narrows, but I digress.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
interesting. But
Oh,
AGS seems cool. I'd like to try grading with them. I sold them some packs at Collecticon.
oh, did you? That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. They like they were gonna like break them on whatnot and give away free grading because they were all heavy Japanese base and expedition packs. So they all had hollows. So
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've tried them once, and I'm probably gonna try them again on some of my personal stuff. But as a business, looking at the actual sellability and the overall marketability of it, definitely not there yet to where, when you're trying to be efficient in this market and get max profit out of what you're doing, it's definitely not there yet. So that's just my caution. I like the grading. I like being able to go onto the website now and see they got the images of the card,
cool.
so you can
Yeah.
actually see what they
All the
saw. It's not like it's a
info.
mystery. You get a PSA. Why did I get a 9? You're flipping the card all over trying to figure this thing out. You go to AGS and it literally makes a yellow mark around why it gave you that grade. What do they see? And then you can go to
Very
the card and
cool.
see it. And that's a big. It gives it more validity to the grade that you got when you can see what it was. Because
That's because
PSA,
we're
you don't know.
OCD detail oriented nerds. We
Well,
love that. Like I thrive on that, right? Like
yeah,
that's like so cool.
I know. It's just awesome to be
uh,
able to go see a picture. Yeah, this is why I
yeah,
got that. Centering's off. And, I got the boxes that shows the centering off and the percentages. It's big. I mean, when you're trying to figure out that stuff, it's really nice.
yeah.
So,
And I honestly, the last thing I'll say on that is I do the same thing to an extent with CGC, right? Like
mhm.
it is my favorite. Like, I mean, I like Beckett a lot, and I grew up on Beckett, which is why I don't like PSA as much. But I really like CGC's product. I know full darn well the market does not value it as much as I do. And,
Yeah.
there's give and take to that. And that's a lot of my personal stuff goes there. A lot of, like I'm chasing this certain set and it's very, very difficult. Like some of them are like pop two in a nine, right? And I'm chasing a set of nines. Like, I'm gonna crack a bunch of eights, sell them to CGC, and see if they come back nines. And I got that in my personal collection, and I feel really good about it. Like I'm just, I'll do that for myself. I will, and I like what they're putting out. So, but I understand the market does not value it, and I have made those mistakes. I mean, and mistakes might be harsh on some of them because it was a very conscious choice, knowing that it didn't really matter. Like
Yeah.
it didn't, but I definitely have, definitely, but it sells eventually. That's what you find. If you're just patient enough,
It goes.
a lot of stuff sells.
It disappears eventually.
Yeah,
So, well,
for
Connor, we've made it all the way to the final question of the evening. And the question for the close this thing up is, knowing what you do now through your travels and grading, would you change what you've done in Pokemon?
Nah, I don't like I don't regret anything in my life. I don't I always look to improve. Um there's definitely elements of the whole thing I would change, but how I've gone about it, what I've focused on, what I've been able to achieve because of what I've done, both from a collecting standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a self-development standpoint, the skills I've gained and gotten to hone. Um, I wouldn't change it at all. I'm always going to be like a vintage seal guy at heart. But from a business standpoint and from a large majority of my collecting as well, I love the graded card game. It's wild. It's you know plastic is probably overvalued at this point, but it's super fun and it's a real thrill to get grades back. And I think it's one of the most fun ways to interact with the hobby. So wouldn't change it for the world.
Cool. And that's I hear that on most. I know you've watched probably quite a few of these too, and that's a pretty common answer. We wouldn't
Mm.
change the direction that we went. We enjoyed it. You don't regret anything in it, and it's definitely a lot of fun. The people you meet, the communities you meet, the things that you do in it are really the focal point of what makes you excited about this hobby. So once again,
Yeah.
it's a really common answer so far. I've only had one person come back and say that they would have changed and gone a different direction, but you know, somebody will have a disagreement with, but for majority, everybody's happy with the directions that we've gone, which is the important thing. It shows that we enjoy
Wouldn't
what
be
we do.
having this conversation if I hadn't,
Yeah.
So what the heck, right? So
Oh. But other than that, I
yeah.
mean, if you got anything else you'd like to discuss, it's I kind of just do an open session here at the end. If you got anything, after 2.5 hours, people are usually pretty much talked
Yeah,
out. So
we've been a long time. Yeah, hopefully they enjoy this.
yeah,
I just look, I'm an open book because I have I have no reason to have any ulterior motive in this game, right? So I want people to come ask questions. I respond when I can. I make videos when I can. I really just want to focus on spending time with the community, both in person and like in discords and things like that. So just come find me, seek me out. I'm really an open book. I just want people to succeed and have fun in this hobby. And it's like I always say, collect what you love, but do it intelligently. I'm
yeah.
just trying to bring a little bit of that to this. So no, we covered a lot of good stuff. I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about or anything on your mind that we started to touch on, but it's been super fun, man. This is a great conversation. So
Yeah. Well, and thank you for coming once again. I
absolutely.
I invite anybody to come and do this that wants to do it, that's in the hobby, because trust me, the more views we can get, the more paths that we see with people doing and the directions people take is definitely informative to anybody that's in this hobby. Anybody that wants to join, we're gonna continue to see new people coming into this hobby. I think we're at a point in this collectibles market where every day you're still seeing new people come in. I see
Yeah.
so many times, new to the hobby, trying to learn, got questions on this, and that's the point of this series is that if you are newer and you're just coming into this, or even if you've been in here for a while, maybe you want to look at, you know, what's going on in graded cards. What can I see for a path over here that might be something I'm interested in? You can do that. So once again, anybody wants to share their come in on this, I'm absolutely open to having anybody in here. And once again, Connor, thank you for your time. It's sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and the information that you have, and bringing it forward into this series is just fantastic.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Andy. It's so much fun to do this. So I'll talk about the hobby all day, every day. So just give
So
me a platform and I have some fun with it. So hope people enjoy it and yeah, take away a nugget or two.
exactly. So other than that, we'll just close it up, and I'll say thank you everybody for watching. Of course, everybody been here. Otherwise, this will be available, of course, inside of the Choose Your Path on YouTube, so that all of these will be available to anybody who wants to go back and watch them and see any of the old ones. They're still all available and will always be available to anybody in the content. But other than that, thank you for coming once again, Connor. If you'd like to say bye to everybody, see it closing.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for having me. And y'all can find me on Instagram, Rock Pokemon, YouTube, Rock Pokemon, Discord, Rock Pokemon. But if you see me in person, I'm just Connor. I ain't nobody. I just happen to be a talking head on the internet, but yeah, I'm just here to have fun. So yeah, thank you for watching for those who did. And yeah, I would appreciate you connecting with me on those platforms. It'd be awesome. We are trying to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers only because it's a mental block of mine. So that would be cool. So we're shooting for it.
So, well, we'll try and help you out there, Connor. So anybody that is watching this still and is here, all the links will be down below in the description. I always put the links to any of the content creators that come on and share their knowledge, so that way you can get in touch with them, find their Instagrams, find their social media sites, and of course YouTube for Connor. Please go and subscribe to him. He always has some really good knowledge and some really good information, especially when he does the Market Mondays. I know he's sometimes has been a little bit slacking on it, but busy kind of cuts into that.
Yeah.
But he does have some really good market information on what's happening. So definitely be sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. But other than that, guys, thanks for everybody that's been here once again, and we will see you next time here on Northwoods TCG.